East Hampton Town Board, we are live.
Great. Thank you, Jason. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Town Board Work Session of November 12th, 2024. Carol, if you could please read the roll call.
Councilmember Flight,
Present.
Councilmember Lease,
Present.
Councilmember Rogers,
Present.
Councilmember Calder-Piedmont,
Present.
Supervisor Burke Gonzalez.
Present. If we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so on our agenda today, we're going to be celebrating Native American history and with a proclamation to Chief Farrow and Sandy Brewster Walker. And we're joined today by members of both the Montaukett and Shinnecock Nations. Welcome. I know Chief Farrow's running a little bit late, so I think what we'll do is we'll move on with the meeting, and when he shows up, we can come back to the proclamation. That's followed by public portion, and then we have three topics on for today. Proposal for lowering speed limits on select roadways, the new senior center secret update and discussion, and ADU recommendations. That's followed by liaison reports and then resolutions. So first I'll ask for a show of hands. Is there anyone here that would like to address the board during? Lauren?
Well, I don't know whether I should do it now or I'm here because of the speed limit. Should I do it after that? Or
You should do it now, please. Welcome to Montauk, Lauren.
Oh my, yes, this is, I'm out of my hood for sure here. But that's okay. I think the first thing we need are two colorful water bottles for Tom and David. They're, okay, good. Phew, I was.
No colorful.
Oh, no, but good enough. First thing I want to do is congratulate Ian Calder-Piedmont on his recent election to the town board. As you know, he is the liaison to the Springs CAC, and I am here representing the CAC today, and want to speak to you about road safety because it is something that has, as Ian very well knows, has been on many of our agendas in the last couple of years. As we have seen, our population in Springs is growing and people are following their doctor's recommendations to get out there and jog and ride their bikes and use our roadways. And unfortunately, people in cars don't seem to understand that these people have an equal right to use the roadways as do vehicles. And they speed terribly, and they are on their phones, and it is it's a very dangerous situation. So of course we're going to hopefully get some reduced speed limits, but I just want to remind the board, not that the board needs reminding, but anybody else who happens to be listening or here, that there are things that pedestrians and bike riders can also do to ensure their safety. Many of these people seem oblivious to the fact that they are not seen by cars. So here I am in my very fashionable charcoal gray sweatshirt and dark pants. You can see me, it's a well-lit room. But if I was on a bike or if I was walking along the road, even in the middle of the day where you're going from sun to shade to sun to shade, many times you can't be seen. So, and black seems to be the color that one wears when one goes out on the roads to either bike or walk. And I don't get it, but I do get it because sometimes I go out on the road, even though I have, even more fashionable, this beautiful vest that Mickey's Karting supplied to all the CAC, and actually anybody who wants one can have one just by letting me know. Here you go. If you're using the roadways, I'll put it on right now so I become even more visible. This is really important. I'm kind of known as a crazy woman in Springs because I drive along and I have these vests, a whole bunch of them in my car. And when I see somebody in black or dark colors, jogging
Or blonde hair, name my wife.
for example,
Gotcha.
I pull over and I give them a vest, and everybody's very happy to see me, and they thank me profusely, and off they go. One woman thanked me profusely, took the vest, folded it up, put it in her backpack, and went on. Another guy, well, I could go on, but I won't. They don't seem to get used, and I don't quite understand it. It's so I'm here to remind everybody that if you are on the roadways, even during the day, please, I'm happy. I have a lot of these vests that Mickey's Karting donated, and we can get more. Or just be aware of what you are wearing and try and wear something that is bright and visible. And if you're on a bike, make sure your lights work. So that's my pitch for today, and thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. Is there anyone else here that would like to address the board? Jason, is there anyone on the line?
Yes, we have a few callers on the line. I will unmute them now.
Great, thank you.
Hello, caller 8764. You're on the air.
Good morning, Town Board, Town Council members. This is David Buda. I'd like to make some brief comments with respect to two of the topics you're going to address today. First, with respect to the recommendations by the ADU committee, I really have to say that the town and the committee doesn't seem to get it. If the ADU program as it currently exists is not successful, if it's not being taken up by the homeowners, the solution is not to radically reduce the minimum lot area from 20,000 to 10,000. I will remind you that it was not too long ago that the minimum lot area was 30,000 square feet, and then it was reduced to 20. Reducing it, or the possibility of reducing it to 10,000 square feet lot area when our town-wide minimum single-family residential zoning size is 20,000 is really abhorrent to me. What the town needs to consider, if we really need, for the sake of affordable housing, and I am strongly an affordable housing proponent to provide more rental apartments for people who are young and new to the area and just getting established and not yet with children perhaps, we need to do more to create rental apartments. Now, if there is a need, perhaps in those 3 areas out of the 5 that currently are underserved and where your applicants are not located, and I'm referring to Wainscott, Amagansett, and Montauk, because most of the existing ADUs and most of the requests for consideration of new ADUs have come only from the Springs and East Hampton, and there's something that you really have to study and learn from that. The areas that need them are not the ones that are asking for it and are not the ones that are building them. So what might we do instead? We need to stop on a dime and look for a radically different approach. What you're really saying is there's a need for 2-family homes in some portions of the town. We can go back to the beginning of zoning in East Hampton when there was a multifamily housing zoning area. The really efficient way to deal with providing that second dwelling unit on a small lot, say 20,000 square feet, is to build new 2-family houses in a zone that will be created for that purpose, but limited to Wainscott, Amagansett, and Montauk, where they are not currently represented. Let me move on very quickly to the speed limit topic. You will recall that I was the one who encouraged you to, and you did act upon my suggestion to change the speed limit for 3 Mile Harbor, Hog Creek Road in the Springs from 35 to 30, and that was a very welcome change. I personally don't find reducing the speed limit from 30 to 25 anywhere in the town, except obviously for school zones, is the wise move to make. That may not come might not be welcome words to many people that I work with and I know, but the reality is that what we need is enforcement, strong enforcement, consistent enforcement, townwide enforcement of the 30-mile speed limit where it exists. That's where the focus should be. Creating speed limits that people will not comply with doesn't foster safety in my mind. It doesn't foster respect for town laws. Thank you.
Thank you, David. All right, Jason, we're going to pause public comment. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, we have 3 more callers on the line, but okay.
Okay. We'll come back to them because I'd like to offer a proclamation to Chief Farrow. Thank you for joining us today. And to Sandy Brewster Walker, if you want to meet me at the podium, please.
In front of the podium or?
Yeah. Perfect.
Oh.
Chief, welcome. It's nice to see you. Thank you for joining us today. Sandy, we've already hugged. So whereas the town of East Hampton is proud to recognize the rich cultural and history of the Montaukett Indian Nation, whose people have lived here for centuries, and whereas in 1910, New York State Judge Blackmar ruled that the Montaukett tribe no longer existed, yet the Montauketts remain resilient and continue to seek rightful recognition. And whereas present day, the Montauketts continue to make important contributions to our community through cultural revitalization efforts, educational outreach, and the preservation of their language and heritage. And whereas the town of East Hampton acknowledges the enduring presence and profound impact of the Montauketts in shaping the history, identity, and community of our town. And whereas in recognition of the Montaukett significance in our community, the town of East Hampton proclaims November as Native American History Month, honoring the Montaukett tribe and all Native American peoples for their history, heritage, and continued contributions. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the town of East Hampton honors the Montaukett Indian Nation and celebrates Native American History Month for their vital place in the history of our town.
Thank you.
And I was hoping.
Do you want to get anyone else in the shot?
Do you
Do you want anybody else in the photo?
Oh, yes. We have Lance Gumps, who's Montauk and Shinnecock and Vice Chair of the National Congress of the American Indian. He's also, he's Vice President of the National Congress of American Indians. I got it right this time. And Vice Chair of the Shinnecock Indian Nation. And Keon, he's with the Mashpee Indians. And we have our book club moderator, Mandy, here with us, Jackson, and her brother, Albert Miller, and one of our trustees, Charles Certain, and his wife. So they could all come up and get in the picture.
Welcome, everyone. Why don't we stand in front of the, would that be easier if we stood in front of
Yeah.
the?
And I know Charles is the photographer, so he wants to take
We get a couple people on this side.
And Mandy's also a photographer, so he wants to do.
So no pressure, Patrick.
I'll read my phone with it.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay. One, 2, 3. And 1, 2, 3. Perfect.
Thank you.
Folks would like to say a few words? Yes. So let me just put the podium back in its spot because I moved it.
You're going to let Sandy speak for the Montaukets? Beautiful. All right.
And after I speak, Vice Chairman Lance Gums would like to say a few words. And
No pressure.
no pressure.
Love that.
Yeah, but I just wanted to thank East Hampton for recognizing us and our long history here on the East End. And also explain to people real briefly that we weren't only in East Hampton, the town of East Hampton. We stretched, and our chief, Wyandanch, and other chiefs signed the deeds from Orient Point and Montauk all the way to Hempstead, jumping over the Shinnecock Indian Nation and the Unkachuk and the Selkirk Nation. But we signed all the deeds up to Hempstead, and that's a project I'm working on right now. And in fact, most of them were signed right before Chief Wyandanch passed away. But we had clusters all over the island, so we're trying to bring that to light with people. But once again, we want to thank you and to give you an update on what's going on with the state. I have a meeting with the Secretary of State's office on Friday with their attorneys, and hopefully we can iron everything out and get on with our lives.
Finally.
But I want to also turn the meeting right now over to Lance and let him say a few words. And do you want to do the drum? If you don't mind. Yeah,
Please.
Lance.
Thank you, Sandy, and thank you, Town Board, for allowing me a few minutes to speak. My name is Lance A. Gums. I am the current Vice Chairman of the Shinnecock Nation, former Chairman of the Shinnecock Nation through the 10 years that it took us to get our federal recognition. I'm also the Vice President for the National Congress of American Indian, which is the largest Native American organization in the country that advocates for all of Indian country as a whole. We deal with all of the issues in Congress, meeting with the president and having discussions on Indian policy and practice throughout the country. I just wanted to say thank you to the board for this acknowledgement of the Montaukets. This is something that we at Shinnecock support fully, their recognition, their state recognition that they're working on. What happened back in 1910 was a true travesty of justice and in violation, actually, of several federal laws that are out there. And we feel that for the Montauks to attain their state recognition is a very important process for the history of Long Island as a whole, and especially for us here on the East End. So we fully support them, the Shinnecock Nation, and endorse their state recognition. We've made that clear to the governor's office as well. We had a recent meeting with the governor and her staff a month and a half ago, and we were able to, discuss the recognition of the Montaukets. My great-great-grandmother was one of the ones that testified on behalf of the Montaukets at that time when that atrocious decision was made. I'm not sure still to this day how, one person can just, through the stroke of a pen, erase a whole people. But it happened, and this has been a long fight to regain it, and we are just happy that the town of East Hampton and the board is recognizing the Montauks for who they are as the original first contact people here on the East End of Long Island. And with that, would like to do, when we have these celebrations in our way, we do a song. And the song that we're going to do, it's called the Peltier Song, and it's in honor of Leonard Peltier, who's been one of the longest incarcerated Native Americans in this country for a crime that even the law enforcement and judges and attorneys who worked on the case then have said it was a miscarriage of justice. So this is a song that we do, and especially in light of this situation and the miscarriage of justice that happened to the Montaukets, and this being Native American Heritage Month, we've had conversations with President Biden as well to discuss a pardon for Leonard Peltier. But it's an appropriate song for where we're at this moment and in this place and space here, down here in Montauk. So we'd like to sing this song. Thank you.
Hey,
Thank you very much. We appreciate this.
And I just wanted to thank you again. We have 1,200 members, and we're all looking forward to working with the town of East Hampton on the Fowler House, and also designating some other historical sites. And thank you.
We look forward to that, Sandy. Thank you. And thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, so Jason, can we go back to the callers, please?
Absolutely. And I will unmute the first caller right now. Hello, caller ending 9004. You're on the air.
Hello?
Hello, you are on the air.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I hear you loud and clear.
Okay, thank you so much. This is Gloria Frazee from East Hampton, and I want to thank you so much for honoring the Montaukets, our neighbors, and also for continuing to honor our neighbors in our community with your proposed speed limit changes. I'm happy to be on one of the multi-jurisdictional streets, and I'm jumping up and down with happiness because people are always speeding here. I would also agree with Mr. Buddha that enforcement is key. So thank you for that. The other thing that is super with our neighbors that we're doing with Rewild East Hampton Compost in the town of East Hampton is this coming Saturday. We are going to be having our final pumpkin drop-off on the south end at Amber Waves Farm, 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. So I'd like to encourage everyone to bring their gourds. Thank you.
Thank you, Gloria.
All right. And I'll mute the next caller. Hello, caller ending
Hi,
5095. You're on the air.
Hi, this is Barbara Zach. I live in the Springs in East Hampton, and I'm calling to comment about the ADU situation. In my opinion, while David Buddha identified the need for purpose-built affordable housing and suggested that other communities might set aside property, I think that's an interesting solution as well. But at the moment, I believe, based on the neighbors that I've spoken with, that the largest hurdle to getting an ADU done is the cost of construction. It's expensive, as we all know. We also know that we have money that has been made available for this purpose, and the intention is to provide grants to homeowners so that they can have that cost burden eased, and that money is being held because there is a pending question about the income tax ramifications and consequences of that kind of grant. I am asking that the board seriously reconsider their decision to continue holding that money, and that we allow the homeowners who would like to build an ADU to make their own informed decision as to whether the net benefit to them is greater to bear the possible risk of a tax consequence, but to be able to move ahead with that ADU with the benefit of the financial support for the building. I think that we've got to look at all of our resources to increase the amount of affordable housing that we have here, and I think we have an important opportunity sitting here going unused. So I'm asking you to reconsider releasing that so that those who are ready can, sign some kind of disclaimer that they know there's a potential income tax risk. The other point I'd like to ask for your consideration longer term is to question the limit on the number of bedrooms. As I understand it, there is a limit on the number of bedrooms that can be built for an ADU, and we seem to be purposefully limiting this almost to single people, as opposed to young families who would be more longer-term source for a permanent workforce here. With my understanding of the limits, a single mother who had a 10-year-old boy and a 12-year-old girl won't be able to find an ADU. Maybe she wants to live here and make this her home, but she can't put her two kids in one room. So unless she shares a room with her daughter, they don't qualify here. It seems to me that we have limitation on bedrooms that is putting a hurdle in place for accommodating families that would lead to a more permanent workforce. That's all I want to ask you to think about. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara.
Okay, unmuting next caller. Hello, caller, ending 2341. You're on the air.
Oh, hi there. It's Brian E. Frage calling in East Hampton. I'm a member of the ADU subcommittee and just joining in to hear how it goes today.
Okay, thank you very much. I will be muting the call-in line after everything is done when the supervisor gives me the okay, though. So on to the next caller. Hello, caller ending 0299. You're on the air.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Supervisor Burke Gonzalez and members of the town board. This is Carolyn Logan Gluck calling, and I wanted to say how delighted I was to see the criteria for lowering speed limits is back on the agenda, and I encourage the board to move forward with a public hearing. This is an important first step to control traffic, to enhance the safety of pedestrians, cyclists, and other drivers alike. And it was good to see 2 additional criteria added. One, to lower speed limits around schools, recreation areas, etc., as well as to consider roads that are hilly, curvy, or with poor sight lines, which in the case of Wainscott would include Wainscott Northwest. However, I caution you or remind you that this is only a first step, as you well know, and invite you to consider, in addition to ramped up enforcement per Mr. Buda, stop signs, decreasing road width, and dare I say, adding speed bumps. But in the meantime, I encourage you to encourage the highway department to maintain roadside rights of way so that they're usable at a minimum by pedestrians who need to step off the roads. So thank you for considering my comments, and I hope that this effort to control traffic will move forward in good time. Thank you again.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Okay, so that is all of the callers have spoken, and that's it so far.
Okay, great. So we're going to move on to our first topic, which is the proposal for lowering speed limits on select town roadways. And I'm joined this morning by Chief of Police Michael Sarlo. Patrick, if you could please cue that up. Welcome, Chief. Okay, go to the next page. So I don't really need to dwell on this slide too long. We know that the benefits of a lower speed limit, we have seen speeding's a leading cause of vehicle crashes, which can injure or kill drivers, passengers, bicyclists, and pedestrians. By lowering the speed limit, we believe we can make our roads safer and reduce the severity of crashes. So I want to say from where we left off. So we were here we did this in Montauk in September, and we had developed, it was myself, I was working with David Lease, Chief Sarlo, and our Highway Superintendent, Steve Lynch, and talked about ways that, we could regulate speed limits on roads to 25 miles per hour. We came back with, we had recommended 3 criteria. We had a discussion here at the Montauk work session. We added 2 additional criteria. And really the goal over the month of October was for board members to go to their CACs and talk to members of their community to see where public sentiment was. So we wanted to finalize the criteria and identify the specific roadways to be considered. But we also know that we have to be cognizant that this has to be a slow rollout. We have to go to the New York State Department of Transportation to get permission to do this, and we don't want to overwhelm them with dozens and dozens of roads to consider. So we feel like we need to do this as a phased-in approach. So the first three criteria that we had identified were the roadways identified in a New York State Senate and Assembly bill from 2016 through 2020. This was something that the board would do a home rule. Each year we had gotten the roadways that were selected based on our input at the time with our CACs, and unfortunately, this legislation never got adopted by New York State. We also wanted to look at roadways that are multi-jurisdictional. Some of our roads, particularly in the village, are 25 miles per hour at one end and 30 in the town portion. And then roadways that have substandard paved areas. The other two criteria that were added were, as the earlier caller just said, Carolyn had mentioned, roadways that are around schools, houses of worship, areas of general assembly and recreation areas, and also roadways that are hilly, curvy, and where sight lines are an issue. So when we looked at criteria 1, the roads that were referred to in the New York State bill in Wainscott were Main Street in Wainscott and Wainscott Stone Road. In East Hampton, it was Indian Hill Road, Miller Lane East, and Miller Lane West. In Amagansett, it was Bluff Road, Mako Lane, Marine Boulevard, Atlantic Avenue, and Indian Wells Highway. If we look at criteria 2, as I said, these are roadways that are multi-jurisdictional. In East Hampton, we're the ones that, now there are others, I should say, but these are the ones we're targeting in the first phase, would be Gould Street, Cooper Lane, Palmer Terrace, Sherrill Road, Osborne Lane, Sunset Lane, Talmadge Lane, and Hunting Avenue. And that's the whole grid between Cedar Street and basically Newtown Lane. And then in Amagansett, we've got Further Lane, which is in East Hampton and Amagansett. Criteria 3 are roadways that have substandard paved areas. That's if they've got narrow lanes and no shoulders, have sand readily encroaching the roadways, or landscaping encroaching on the town right of way, and are heavily traveled by pedestrians and cyclists. We had identified some of these roads would be roads throughout the Beach Hampton community, Gerard Drive, and Louse Point Road. Then the other two criterias, while there was only one road that was identified by the Montauk CAC that would meet the criteria potentially for number 5, roadways that are hilly, curvy, and where sightlines are an issue, and that would have been Old Montauk Highway. But in consultation with the chief, we don't have the traffic data or accident reports to be able to justify that being included in this go-round. So basically, this next slide is just a summary of the proposed roadways that we would like to take to the New York State Department of Transportation. So just how we got here, the mechanism for this was Governor Hochul had signed into legislation amendments to the New York State Vehicle and Traffic Law that permitted certain municipalities to reduce from 30 to 25. But because East Hampton is not considered a suburban town as defined in the traffic law and does not have a population of more than 50,000, we cannot reduce the speed limit without first following a series of procedural steps. So what we need to do, you can go to the next slide, Patrick. So what we need to do is we would need to pass a resolution if board members are comfortable with the roadways that have been identified to date, asking the state to conduct a review of the requested speed limit change. Once that resolution were to pass, the town clerk must send a certified copy of the resolution with the appropriate New York State Department of Transportation form, and it has to go through the Suffolk County Highway Superintendent for review, and then the county forwards the paperwork on to the state DOT. Once the state review is complete, then the town will be notified of the DOT's decision. And if we were to receive a favorable decision, that's when we would hold a public hearing on the local law reducing the speed limit. And then once the local law is adopted, it would be filed with the Secretary of State for inclusion in Chapter 240, vehicles and traffic of the town code, and the proper signage would be installed. So there is a pathway forward. But as you can see, because of the size of our municipality, there are a number of steps that we have to take to get there. So I guess what I was hoping is Patrick, if you could go back 2 slides. So where we have a summary of the proposed roadways, I don't know if board members have thoughts, questions, have any questions for Chief Sarlo to see, how we got here and how we thought this process could go forward.
I support this list. I think the criteria that you've proposed is very sound, particularly when you know that you also have to go to the New York State DOT and still get their permission as this law was proposed. I think the criteria for these particular roads are very solid and sound as a first go around, and I like the procedural steps as well in determining this moving on in the future. I've heard folks say make every road in the town 25 miles an hour, but I don't really think there's a sound mechanism or if that's logical. We always try to base our decisions on responding to issues and also using a systematic approach. And I support this.
Yeah, I'll second that. I mean, I think the process by which these roads have been identified is sound. And, there's been a lot of talk from callers previously about enforcement, and that definitively is part of this. But the other part of this is responsibility. These roads have been identified because there is a risk to safety. And you may not get enforced, but you may get into an accident. And if you're doing 30 miles an hour versus 25 miles an hour, not only will the impacts of your accident be significantly higher, putting you at risk, but also, the damage you're going to do to the other person is significantly worse. And so that's the responsibility piece here. I think enforcement, yes, does have to happen, but we are introducing these changes for public safety. And I think that's something that people have to take into account.
So I think that the rollout is something I understand we're trying to slow into and get the history and information. I still would like to continue on and look at what the Montauk CAC and the member of Montauk CAC is looking for as far as Old Montauk Highway. I understand the timing of that coming. If you look at the holistic approach of these locations and historical traffic patterns, this does go on a grid area. If you're going up Indian Hill, Miller Lane, these are all areas in the same little community. The same as can be said as far as the lanes of, I call them the lanes of East Hampton because I grew up on Gould Street. And those areas then too, they're multi-jurisdictional areas where they're heavily traveled, and the same as far as Amagansett and Wainscott. So I think as far as the initial rollout and see how the state would effectuate this, I think it's appropriate.
I don't have anything to add except for I support this list and the criteria, and I'm curious to see what the state will say to our request.
All right, Mike, the only thing that I realize that doesn't carry over on this chart is Springs, Louse Point, and Girard Drive.
Yeah, they were cited earlier in
Right.
they just didn't carry over into here.
Right, but we want to pursue.
Yeah, based on the criteria and what we've discussed as far as, where we receive complaints, where we see a heavy pedestrian traffic, where sand encroaches in the roadway, where there may not be appropriate lane signage, a white restraining line and a yellow middle line and that many people using the area, it fits the criteria. And I think in the interest of public safety, those areas seem like they get a tremendous amount of complaints into us, and I think you guys get feedback from that as well. And I think they make sense to be included. I just wanted, my comments, I've been involved in this process since the first resolution in 2016. And we have over 300 miles of roadway in the town of East Hampton. I think, as we've said, we have to have a slow rollout. And I think the analysis and looking at how heavy the volume of traffic is, where the complaints come in, how many people are using the roadways as pedestrians and cyclists, and where we can basically reduce reaction time is one of the main goals here. So, we can't tell the state we want 300 miles of roadway to be 25 miles an hour. They're not gonna consider the request. And there is accident data, and there's a reason there's a 30 mile an hour standard speed limit throughout the state for town roadways and standard roadways, graded 45, 30, et cetera. And the state, we have to be reasonable about how we go about considering them to ask, for changes in that within our municipality. I feel like reducing reaction time in these areas where there may be children, cyclists, pedestrians is the key to help making these areas safer. Enforcement, I'll be the first to admit we can always do better. However, I want to remind everyone with 300 miles of roadway, we have an average of 5 to 7 officers out per shift. We handle over 20,000 calls for service per year. We write about 5,000 traffic summonses a year. And we make over 150 DWI arrests per year, over 400 vehicle and traffic law arrests per year. The enforcement is there to the extent it can be without having officers just sit on your road all day. So we do the best we can to be responsive to the areas where we receive complaints and where we see as being problematic. Increased enforcement is always our efforts. We use grant-funded state money to put officers out as extra patrols in these areas. We use the speed enforcement signs to gather data and to help slow traffic in those areas. We take these issues very seriously. Our overall traffic accident data has sort of leveled off in the last 5 or 6 years. We were seeing upwards of 1,000 vehicle accidents per year 10, 12 years ago. We're now down to about 800 per year, 820. So there's traffic mitigation, there's enforcement mitigation, there's conditions, there's public awareness. I think on the whole, as a municipality, we're doing a pretty good job considering the increase in volume of people here in the summertime. Again, as Lauren Bolger stated, people need to have more visibility and take more responsibility and accountability for themselves when they walk and cycle. And I think that's a key piece of awareness and public relations that we continue to try to push forward, and we'll continue to do that. I think if we can get these through, it starts to become, we're not going to ask the state for too much at any one point in time. And I think we need to put these through, see what we get back from the state, what their feedback is, if they need anything else from us for supporting documentation, how they go about evaluating it. And it will help us moving forward to see whether we should try to expand the program or what other areas we should consider moving forward. The last thing is, I think, just, once the signage is in place and the enforcement is in place, we'll start to really get a feel for how it's working, and then we'll determine what we do next. So that's
yeah, I think multiple roads on this list also check off more than one box.
Yes, absolutely.
And so do the Girard Drive and Louse Point. There's multiple boxes that they check off.
Correct.
Those two locations are substandard
exactly.
roadway width.
Yep.
And also lead to heavily used recreational facilities as well, and are winding, etc.
I think another portion of this, it was touched on by one of the speakers and something we've spoken to many times here, is actually our town right-of-ways, which unfortunately, maybe unknowing to some property owners, are actually being overtaken by property owners as far as landscaping, impediments and such, and the right-of-ways are actually there. Many of them could be up to 66 feet wide and maybe 12 feet on what you potentially think is off of the asphalt on your property. It's not. And those right-of-ways are there either for utilities, but also for areas for people to pull over. And this would be more of a collaboration between the highway department, building department, code, and others, and police department that, I think we should also look at in the coming months then too, and see how that plays into increasing sight lines and hopefully decreasing conflict of pedestrian, cyclists, and automobile.
Yeah, I agree with David, and I just also, something that the chief informed me of is that those right-of-ways are areas where you can swerve if there's something in front of you. It's a safety issue as well.
Any questions from you guys? I appreciate the support on this, and I know we're going to have people saying, I wish my road were included, and but like I said, I think it's been a very reasoned and well thought out approach to making this initial request to the state, and we'll see where it goes from there.
Yeah, and I think what we'll do, Rob, if you could work with us to put a resolution on for Thursday, November 21st, with these roads spelled out, and we'll figure out what it takes to do the New York State DOT form. So maybe we could reach out to Steve Lynch to see if he's familiar with.
Chief, I do have one question, which is, obviously this was introduced in the village around a year and a half, 2 years ago. Do we have any report from them as to what the traffic and accident results was?
No, I don't. I know the village, state law has allowed villages to be able to reduce their speed limits for as long as I know. And they had several of their main heavily traveled roadways that have been 25 for a long time. They've just gradually started to reduce more roads within their jurisdiction, but I don't know of any specific data from the village itself. But I'm sure that could be foiled and we could try to get our hands on that.
All right, terrific.
I just want to say thanks to the chief. This, as Lauren pointed out, this subject comes up all the time.
Yeah.
And every time we've spoken about speeding, you always have factual information for us based on what your team is seeing and the studies with the signs. And I'm certainly not an expert, so I really appreciate your support and knowledge on this.
Yep. Thank you. Appreciate it.
You can reach out to one of us after the meeting today. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Chief.
Appreciate it.
All right. So we're going to move right along, and we've got a presentation now from Tina Lagaren on the new Senior Center SECRA update, and then the board will hold a discussion. Welcome, Tina.
Thank you, Supervisor. Greetings, town board members. Tina Lagaren from the Planning Department. I'm here today to discuss an update to the environmental review for the Senior Center, specifically regarding new information pertaining to the EAF Part 2 and the assessment of endangered species. On the next slide, this is just a quick reference to the project location and scope. Nothing regarding the project description has changed since the last presentation to the board on October 15th. Regarding the information that has changed, there is new information specifically related to the northern long-eared bat. As a refresher on the information that I shared during my last presentation on October 15th, the entire town is located in northern long-eared bat potential habitat on DEC's applicable mappers. And this species has recently been changed in their regulatory status from threatened to endangered. And this was something that we therefore chose to carefully analyze in the environmental review. On the same day as I was presenting the EAF Part 2 to the town board, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service was issuing new guidance on the northern long-eared bat, which was later finalized and released on October 23rd. That guidance provided refined criteria for analysis of northern long-eared bat in federal and non-federal projects. The October guidance is what I'm going to call it for short, and it's described by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service as voluntary and subject to periodic review. Nevertheless, in keeping with the careful analysis and conservative approach we took to this issue, we asked our qualified consultant biologist team to analyze the new guidance to determine if there were any additional protections that might be suggested in the guidance that would change what the town board had committed to protect the species. So I'm going to summarize the findings of that assessment. The October 2024 guidance lays out a 4-step process for conducting voluntary assessments for northern long-eared bat. The consulting biologist performed a comparative review of this 4-step process against the coordination history that the project went under the town's review with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. The comparative review found that our approach would satisfy steps 1, 2, and 3 as listed on this slide. It further found that step 4 would not be necessary, and step 4 includes the implementation of minimum conservation measures to reduce impacts. Now, that would not have been necessary because the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service in their comments to us did not trigger that review by issuing the conclusions on that slide, saying likely to adversely affect or that take is reasonably expected to occur as a result of the proposed action. Because those didn't apply, step 4 wouldn't have been required. Additional conclusions of the consultant biologists are summarized on this slide. They produced a technical memo on October 30th, 2024, and concluded that adherence to the winter clearing window which is what the project proposed in order to protect the northern long-eared bat, which means that clearing can only occur between December 1st and February 28th, and no tree clearing is allowed for the majority of the year between the dates of March 1st and November 30th, is consistent with and even stricter than what the October guidance would recommend for a project like this. If the proposed action would have gone through step 4 under the voluntary guidance, the clearing window prescribed would have been the summer clearing window, which only restricts clearing between June 1st and August 15th. And this is designed to be protective of the most sensitive life stage of the northern long-eared bat, which is the pup season. The winter clearing window, which is committed to by the town for the senior center, avoids clearing during a much wider time frame and is therefore considered to be protective of the entire life cycle of the northern long-eared bat, because the species is assumed to not be within the landscape of the proposed action at the time clearing occurs, which is only during the winter. So therefore, no changes in the proposed clearing approach were warranted based on this review, as the clearing approach proposed by the town is more protective of what would have been required. In order to demonstrate that we did consider the October guidance in the environmental review, we did make a small update to the form. We added a sentence in item 7 of the Part 2 EAF to reflect that we've conducted a review and that our approach is more conservative than that suggested by the updated guidance. This change that little green arrow points to is the only change we made that to the board form the board previously saw. And with that, my remarks are concluded. And if anybody has any questions or comments, please let me know.
Okay. So thank you, Tina. I appreciate that. Who would have thought that the day you're presenting, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife would come out with their guidance?
Only my luck.
They were listening to you.
Yeah.
So what I'd like to do now, I don't know, Patrick, is if the EAF Part 2 is loaded on the computer? Would you mind if we just kind of go through it so that the board has an opportunity to discuss and just make sure we're, where we're all going to be netting out? So, and before we get to impact on the land, I just want to say that I think we've already demonstrated the need for a new senior center. We have, a growing senior population, and the current center is woefully inadequate for all the programs, the nutrition programs we're offering, because now we've got 2. We have the in the dining room lunch program. We also now have the grab and go. We offer all types of wellness activities and social activities. And what's interesting is that since Patrick has been posting about the wellness, activities, the bingo, the movies, the we put on the Instagram and Facebook, the meals that we're serving, what the menu is, we've actually seen more people participate. Like it's driven more participation by seniors who hadn't previously gone. And we firmly believe that if we build it, they will come. We hear it as we move around town. Folks are asking us when are we going to get the new senior center? So I think there's a demonstrated need for a new center. And now we get to the land.
Yeah, so I'm going to jump in on the land part a bit. And so we know that the proposed action involves construction on 5.5 acres of a 7-acre site. We know that we've looked at the site work and that construction on slopes 15% or greater will occur. However, on slopes 15 or greater, the work on slopes 15 or greater has been minimized to avoid those slopes to the practical extent in keeping with the project purpose and need. A lot of these items, I really came, besides 10 years on the zoning board, but also in the South Fork Wind Project, the necessity and the importance of many of the construction protocols here match what the state requires for larger construction projects. And with that, that includes the SWIP, or the Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan, and that will be implemented to minimize erosion during construction. That's a very important element. The proposed action will involve constructions that proceeds, best practices and phases, with the overall duration will occur over 20 months. Phase 1 will occur from December 2024 to February 25 and will include clearing, removal of existing on-site trees, shrubs, and site stabilization. Phase 2 will occur over a 17-month period and will consist of the development of the new senior center. And again, during that construction process and being on the zoning board, this phased construction process of not everything happening at once, it certainly meets SECRA and is also best practice. The geological features, we found that in the SECRA process that there's no unique or unusual landforms present in the proposed action. It's not in proximity to surface water bodies, local or state federal wetlands. No potential significant adverse impacts have been discovered as per the form, and the measures to manage that all-important stormwater and protect groundwater quality have been included in the proposed action. And I think if you walk through the rest of these proposals, you'll see that, under air, plants and animals, and agricultural resources, the same thoughtfulness has been developed during this process of developing this plan and also adhering to the SEQA process. So, when folks complain about the SEQA process, I think you're seeing it at work in a very positive way here, and as it is meant to be used for these projects. I don't know if I should call out anything else. We talked about plants and animals. There's as far as air, it's amazing and very well received by me that this is a net zero proposed building, and we're going to do more to protect air quality than previous construction across the town, for sure. We don't have any agricultural resources. The site is it's not located in the ag district. It is adjacent to land use for ag, which is a horse farm on the eastern border. But the site developments and activities will be screened from the horse farm by a row of evergreen planting. So we're mitigating any potential impacts, which is also what you're bound to do by the SEQA process. The aesthetic resources, it will not result in any obstruction of any aesthetic resources. The way this project is located, it sits pretty far back on a property. It's a flag lot entrance, so you're going to be far back off the road. The phase 1 documentary study and the archaeological study were conducted, and we were cleared on these findings as well. The property is not, as it says in referring to the form, designated as open space, and will not result in the loss of current or future recreational resources. In fact, it enhances them. And also, again, I think that particular section comes back to the need that we have for more recreational opportunities for our senior population. Transportation, we had the traffic report, and the report concluded that the action will not have an perceivable impact on the roads there. There's scheduled classes. We can also mitigate any potential impacts by staggering the scheduling. This is not a 24-hour use proposed for this site. It's a rather limited time frame that could produce any traffic implications here. Noise, vibration, odor, and light. I think it's appropriate that the emergency generator has a standard factory sound enclosure and will be located with a 3-sided sound attenuation to minimize the noise. I think that's important, and I think that's something we should look at maybe across the town for maybe even residential generators as they become more popular as we face increased blackouts to the climate crisis. I don't know if anybody else wants to jump in. I'm going through everything here, but I think that, again, we'll follow the dark skies lighting codes of the town to the letter. And the temporary construction noise, I also think, and light and disturbance, that can be mitigated. Again, as was strongly done during the Southwark Wind Farm construction process by how we lay out our construction process. I think that it's a positive impact on human health, actually, to have a functioning senior center that will expand opportunities for people to maintain their health, to have meals across town. I think, again, with any construction project, that will be limited and contained in a short time period, if any. And I really, as I go to this quite frequently, and is something that we are as a town board bound to adhere to, this action is consistent with Goal 10 of the 2005 Comprehensive Plan, and that is to provide adequate facilities, land, and programs for schools, town offices, and other functions, daycare, senior care, families, and other educational, cultural, recreation, and health care needs. So this project does not conflict. It is in compliance with the comprehensive plan as written, and all the plans subsequently adopted into the plan, something I frequently talk about as well, and also the stated goals 255-111 of zoning that takes into account creating expanding opportunities for seniors to extend their lives in East Hampton. And did I pick up too much?
No.
Sorry.
You're on a roll.
Community character, it's certainly consistent with community character. It's well shielded. It will contain walking paths, which is part of our community character for seniors to enjoy the outdoors. It'll have sustainable landscaping, which is something we're promoting as community character. And certainly the view shed there won't be impacted at all by any parts of the structure once built. And so I don't think we've missed any potential impacts during this lengthy CEQA process. And again, for me, this is the proper, really exemplifies the importance of the CEQA process as we develop our construction plans, and a proper use of it to promote good construction and have proper mitigations.
I think that's very well put. I mean, the thing I would add to this is that, you demonstrated, for example, with the seasonality associated with the bat life cycle here. New things may crop up, and that is part of the CEQA process. And we do the due diligence in this, as we've done in this case, to say we will explore it, we will address it as appropriate. And, that is what the CEQA process is there for, to continually look at this. It's a document in time. At this point in time, I am comfortable with what our findings of the CEQA process are. That is not to say it's an entirely closed book. If something else does crop up and we need to adjust our plans accordingly, we do that. But as my colleague says, I think this is a really great example of how the CEQA process is being used to address the critical issues.
So, to me, this is a community resource, and I think the community resource that we're building here is something that's going to go for multiple generations forward, and not just the multiple generations that are here within the township currently right now. Kate, you knocked it out of the park on that. I thank you so very much for bringing not just the board through, but also the viewing public. We're even looking at impacts on surface water, so number 3. I don't see that happening, but it's an overall greater look at it then too. So I appreciate that, Tina, for doing so, and the team. I have no other comments. I look forward to getting a shovel on the ground, Madam Supervisor.
Nothing to add here.
So I think what I'd like to do is that we should draft a part 3 for the issuance of a negative declaration for the proposed action, and we could entertain that resolution next Tuesday. Okay, everyone good with that?
Yep, I'm good with it.
Beautiful. All right, thank you, Tina.
Thank you.
We really appreciate your hard work on this. Okay, so now we're up to our last presentation, and that is the ADU committee recommendations, and we've got Eric Shantz here, our housing director, and I think, Tom, you wanted to tee this up.
I did. I just want to take a moment to thank the committee members who are involved with this. As with all committees, it's a commitment of your time to the town's well-being that, really doesn't get recognized enough. It is truly appreciated that you share your knowledge and expertise and just general thoughtfulness as we look to deliver these things. And beyond that, the different town departments I've worked with, housing, obviously Eric has been a stalwart in getting this kind of to where it is. But planning, building, attorney's office, we've reached out and worked extensively with all of them. Why are we looking to do this? We obviously have a major housing issue in the town right now. And for me, that creates many of the other problems that we see as a town, be it traffic, be it litter, you name it. I think addressing our housing issue is critical to many of the challenges we're facing as a community. So why specifically ADUs? Well, I think Eric's going to speak to this much clearer than I can, but there's an environmental benefit to these. Building something onto an existing structure is so much more beneficial to the environment than something new, breaking new ground. It also has kind of financial benefits, for residents. One of the key things we hear as a board is the challenge of affordability to people in this town. The kind of the increase of ADUs and, the increase of scope of who can do an ADU allows more people to stay in place. It allows more multifamily dwellings. And it kind of offers income potentially to those people who are struggling out here to do this. I did hear Mr. Buda's comments about, going to 10,000 square feet, which is one of the recommendations. And it is something we did discuss extensively as a committee. I think Eric's going to kind of show the numbers on this very clearly, but the current policy of a 20,000 square foot lot is very income restrictive, and it's geographic in its nature too, as Mr. Buda called out. But, in many of the hamlets within the town, the proportion of lots which are under the existing 20,000 square feet is extensive. And by allowing the 10,000 square feet change, which is one of the critical changes we're recommending here, it really opens it up to the hamlets to allow people in those areas to do ADUs. And something I think Eric's going to speak to is, where we've had to refuse existing ADU permits because of lot size. Just bluntly, if we are serious about addressing this housing issue as a community as a whole, this delivers. And while I think we do have to always be cognizant about the impacts to our community character of any changes we make to any aspect of the code, I think the one thing we're going to call out here is just that we still maintain a cap on the number of ADUs per hamlet. So this is not to say there's going to be ADUs everywhere, because we still have that cap. It is more about allowing more people to do ADUs. Lastly, I do want to speak to that caller who kind of mentioned the funding aspects of CHAB, and it is something that does concern me. I share her thoughts on that, and perhaps that's something we can revisit as we move forward. But with that, I'm going to hand it over to Eric, and thank you very much.
Yep, thank you, Tom. Eric Shantz, I'm the Director of Housing for the town. I'm going to go through the ADU committee's recommendations here. There's really 4 specific ones, but we'll get to those in a second. So basically the purpose and goals of the committee, you'll see on the screen here. The committee was formed basically to ask the questions, how can ADUs help the housing crisis? What regulations have worked and which haven't? That's a key part of this. What obstacles do residents who want to construct ADUs face, and what changes to the code could result in additional ADUs without compromising community character? So this is a list of the committee members and ex officios. Fred Doss as the chair, Tom Flight, obviously as the main member of the town board. But you can see there's also been collaboration with other departments, notably mine, the housing department. And then also the tax issue with ADUs was brought up, and we have received guidance from our outside counsel. So basically, everybody on the board knows this already, but just to give some basics of what ADUs are, and there's a picture there. There's 6 images. The first one on the top left is a detached ADU. The rest are different variations of an attached ADU. So ADUs are smaller secondary dwelling units
situated on the same lot as a larger single-family home. They can't be purchased or sold as separate properties. They are essentially accessory and subordinate to the principal residential use in building. They can be within a residential building, which is the term we use as attached, or a separate accessory building, which is detached. They require fewer resources to build than single-family residences and use less energy than they do. They can allow for homeowners to downsize by living in an apartment and renting the residence, and can provide a source of income for that property owner. They can also provide affordable housing for tenants. The rent is capped, and can provide also housing for family members or caretakers. So ADUs are very beneficial. I don't think I need to convince this board of that, but just giving a basic overview. So one of the other important things to sort of rehash are what the current town code requirements are for ADUs, putting them into sort of three categories here: permits, dimensional regulations, and tenant and landlord requirements. A permit obviously is needed from the building department when an ADU is initially built. They require some basic information to make sure that the lot can have an ADU on it. But the main permit is handled by my department, by the housing office. We charge a minimal fee for a yearly permit renewal, but it is a yearly minimum renewal that's required. It verifies that the rent charged is compliant, the property owner and the tenant status, to make sure that they're eligible. And as Tom had mentioned, there's still a cap on the number of permits that can be issued in the town, with 40 per school district, 200 town-wide. Very briefly, some dimensional requirements. One that's going to be paramount in this is the minimum 20,000 square foot lot area requirement for both attached and detached ADUs. You can only have one ADU on each lot. There's a maximum of 2 bedrooms per ADU, as was mentioned in one of the public comments. And then the minimum size is basically 300 square feet to 1,200 square feet for an attached ADU, and 300 to 600 for a detached. So the maximum rent is capped. There is no income limit on a tenant or landlord. The leases need to be a minimum of 1 year, unless the tenant is someone that works within the town of East Hampton, in which case they can be seasonal. And the property must be the owner's primary legal residence, which is another key concept that we'll get into in a second. So how many ADUs have already been built, and how many people are currently interested in building one? You might call this slide supply and demand, with on the left-hand side being some numbers of the ADUs that have already been built, the existing supply, and then demand being some information that we got from the +1 ADU program. So as far as existing ADUs, there are 43 properties right now that have ADUs built in the various stages of permitting. I need to update some of these numbers because we've been ongoing, as you'd expect. It's always an ongoing process, updating permits. But really what I wanted to show you here is that almost 80% of the existing ADUs are attached ADUs. And then also provided in there is the distribution, as I think everyone suspects, and as was noted by Tom and by a public comment, most of the existing ADUs are within Springs and East Hampton. So as far as future ADUs, the town, in partnership with Community Development Corporation of Long Island, offered this past late summer into fall the +1 ADU program grant. That is a grant that comes from New York State. CDLI is the recipient of that grant, but is administering it on behalf of the town of East Hampton. We opened it in August for interest forms. Those individuals who are interested have to be further vetted to make sure that they have a viable application. But that process was opened in August and closed in October. I think, in a sense, it's a great success in that we received 89 interest forms. So almost 90 individual property owners throughout the town reached out to CD Long Island and to the housing department with interest in getting this grant to help build an ADU. So what you have there are some basic figures. Springs, most of the inquiries came from Springs. Important point here, though, so 39 individual requests or interest forms were submitted from Springs residents. 23 of those properties meet the minimum lot area of 20,000 square feet. 16 do not. What you have there is a breakdown by hamlet of that, but basically, in summary of all of those 89 requests, 61% of the properties would meet the 20,000 square feet, but 40% do not. They're less than 20,000 square feet. So those are some, rather than speaking in hypotheticals, those are some real numbers of individuals that came to the town looking for assistance to build an ADU. And right off the bat, 40,000 of them do not have a lot that is of the requisite lot area, excluding them from being eligible. So basically right now, again, there's 200 permits available. 34 are currently active. That's only 17% of what's available. The committee really focused on this and why ADUs haven't been more popular. Really, there's sort of four main reasons. One being that many owners of lots less than 20,000 square feet in lot area have shown interest but cannot. The second is many property owners who have inquired about building an ADU have been found ineligible because they're second homeowners or seasonal homeowners, and the requirement of primary legal residence immediately disqualifies them. The third, many residents are unfamiliar with what is permitted, required, or the application process, and the entire application process could benefit from measures to streamline it and decrease the amount of time it takes. And then fourth, as mentioned in a public comment, and as I think everyone suspects, high cost of initial construction. Often a sanitary system needs to be upgraded, adding costs. There are potential tax impacts. And a lack of awareness or availability of financial assistance programs. So when the committee identified those, we came up with four specific.
Ask a question?
Yeah.
So do you know off the top of your head what triggers upgrading sanitary?
I mean, it can be a lot of different situations. Generally speaking, if you have a home that is 4 bedrooms and by adding the ADU, the health department essentially deems the ADU as another bedroom. So once you go over 4 bedrooms, I guess you could look at it as aggregate on the property. They deem it as jumping it into another category of generated sanitary flow, which is a mandatory sanitary system upgrade. There are other reasons why it could happen. Some of them are dimensional. For example, if you're doing a detached ADU that is a significant distance away from the primary residence, you can't just tap into the existing system if it's of adequate volume. Those are really the main reasons of why that would be triggered. So the first recommendation here relates to the minimum lot area. And what the committee came up with was reducing the minimum lot area requirement from 20,000 square feet to 10,000 square feet only for the attached ADUs. So these are the ones that are within the principal structure, the existing residence. So in being that they require less lot area to construct due to setbacks and building separation requirements, and they're less visible and identifiable as a separate housing unit. Attached ADUs can be built using existing interior spaces of a residence, basically meaning you don't see any difference to the structure. The town code already permits owners of a residential property of any size to rent out 2 guest rooms within a residence with no permit, no occupancy requirements other than the fire code, and no cap on the rent. So essentially, right now, where you have the ADUs that are limited on 2 bedrooms, obviously that would enable someone to add cooking facilities, but right now you could rent 2 bedrooms.
But the property owner has to be in residence.
That's true, yes. Which is currently a requirement also for the ADUs, but yes, a very good point.
So let me ask you a question. So if I live on a 10,000 square foot lot and I have a unfinished basement that's 1,000 square feet, can I do an ADU, or I don't qualify for an ADU because my lot's too small?
As long as you're under 20,000 square feet, you don't qualify.
So even if you have a unfinished basement. Okay.
Yep, and that's exactly the line of thinking that guided the ADU committee's conclusions was, what is the significant harm of this?
And we do our dimensional table, we had cutoffs, 20,000 square foot, and it certainly is by no means representational of the amount of 19,000, 18,000. I mean, there's a large number, and we've done that work on the zoning code committee to show how many lots in the town are actually under that number, which would preclude them from this thing, this ability to have an affordable ADU on your property.
Exactly. Again, this relates back to some of the information given in a previous slide, but nearly 80% of the existing ADUs are attached. So that is sort of the development pattern that has occurred. That suggests that ADUs are, attached ADUs are possibly more desirable, but probably more likely they're just easier to build due to lower costs and fewer lot area constraints. That's kind of along the lines of the questions here is an attached ADU, you can use an existing interior space and it's much easier to get to the accomplishing building an ADU. Property owners with smaller lots, maybe.
Eric, can I just jump in?
Sure.
Can you convert, so in our current code structure, can you convert a garage to an ADU?
You can.
Okay. I just
You need to have 20,000 square feet, though.
Right, I know the lot is still a limitation, but you can convert that into living space and it won't impact your gross floor area calculations.
Correct.
Because they're exempt from that calculation.
Property owners with smaller lots, another key point here is that property owners that have smaller lots, they may be more likely to have housing cost burdens than those who own larger lots. These are generally more blue-collar people, and they could benefit by collecting rent from the tenants. So
Depends where in town you are,
that's true. That's true.
because there are areas with smaller lots that are quite costly.
For sure. Another benefit of the change from 20,000 to 10,000 square feet of minimum lot area as the minimum lot area would be possibly incentivizing updating sanitary systems on substandard lots. There was a public comment made. That's true, essentially, that anything below 20,000 square feet could be called a substandard lot and really accurately would. That's both in relation to health department regulations, where that's kind of the minimum size for a lot under theirs, and then the town code, where B residence is the sort of smallest zoning district in the town. A lot of those lots have antiquated sanitary systems, and perhaps by allowing more of those to come in and build ADUs, they're probably going to have mandatory sanitary upgrades. Yes, that does add expenses. That's something that individual property owner can work out, but it's sort of a foot in the door to getting them to do a sanitary upgrade. Obviously, the town has other programs that have been very successful that are independent of ADUs, but it could be another way to get interest from members of the public. And then also, Kate was alluding to this, if you do decrease the minimum lot area requirement from 20,000 to 10,000 square feet, you're making 41% more of the lots within town eligible for an ADU. Again, we're only recommending that for attached. And again, a really important distinction here is that the committee's recommendation is not to change the cap of the maximum number per school district or townwide. So this is really a way to amend the code so that the individuals who have come to the town seeking to build an ADU can have an avenue to do that. It would not result in a net increase in the number of ADUs that could be built in the town.
Yeah, you're only opening up eligibility.
Exactly.
Eric, on the last point there on the lots by the amount that you're increasing by decreasing the 10,000 square feet, is that removing all of unbuildable lots or lots owned by town owned, or is that just a?
It is not. Yeah, it's a bit of a broad stroke. So yeah, I think, and that's a good point because.
So not to be alarmist there, if it's looking at 4,000 lots, there's going to be a percentage of that actually would be either within town owned controlled open space or such that wouldn't be able to be used. So what it still does is allows for the buildable lots to be able to be potentially looked at as far as an ADU under 20,000. Or to 10,000 square feet, but at the same time, there's going to be it shouldn't be alarmist to individuals or potentially school districts saying that there's going to be 4,000 new lots, because that's not a possibility also.
Yeah, correct. So the second recommendation relates to the primary legal residence requirement, which was crafted basically directly to prohibit second homeowners or homeowners that are not going to be occupying the principal residence on a year-round basis from being able to have an ADU. The idea being that the owner should be present at all times. Problems with that, though, are that according to the last census, and this hasn't changed a lot in the past, I think 40 or 50 years, if my memory serves correct, of census figures, but about 60% of the housing units in the town are seasonal second homes. So right away, by prohibiting that, you've eliminated 60% of the residential properties within the town from being eligible of building an ADU. And we've received, I know my office has received inquiries from numerous individuals, at least a dozen, who wanted to build an ADU and were asking for information about it. And pretty soon we got to the conclusion that they can't build one because this is their second home. One of the benefits of that is that, again, this is a generality, but often those individuals have more resources to actually be able to build an ADU, which is another consideration. One thing to consider, too, is that under the town code right now, we currently permit an entire residence to be rented without the owner present and with no restrictions through the no rent restrictions through the rental registry process. So there is an avenue where somebody can have occupants on their property in their absence. Obviously, it's not a direct analogy. There are different rules that go with that program, but it's something to consider, because if the fear is that there's going to be individuals living on a specific property while the owner of that property is not present, there is an avenue through the code where we permit that type of occupancy.
And has that actually been identified as a fear? Because it shocks me with the amount of, rentals on VBRO and all those stuff that we have in this town, that would be a fear.
I mean, the town board recently and, over the past 20 years has had numerous conversations and, amended the regulations that go with ADUs. Obviously, there are a lot of reasons why the current restrictions are in there, but if my memory serves me correct, of a lot of the conversations that were had sort of the last time, which I think was a year ago or 2 years ago, that there were really in-depth discussions about the regulations. That was really the big fear. And the reason for the primary legal residence requirement was, it really was directly aimed at, okay, well, second homeowners, or somebody who's not living on this property year-round, present more of a potential for, an absentee landlord situation. So I think that was really the direct motivation to remove that. I'm sure there were others, but that's a long-winded way of saying yes. I think that it was really intended to, well, what if somebody doesn't live on the property and they rent out their home? Okay, well, they're not.
So I think for me, the concern would be more not that, since obviously most of my neighborhood gets rented out. Not most, that's a far exaggeration, but certainly in my block, many homes are rented out through the rental registry, and the homeowners are not there. And many of these houses, in fact, are not owned by people that live in this town, that just have snatched up a bunch of houses for this. But I think what the concern may be is that these ADUs could potentially be also used as a second rental on the property. I think that would be more of a concern than absentee ownership or people renting out a space when they're not there, without the owner being.
It's a great point, and there is a restriction in the code right now that you can't have an ADU on any property that has, I think there's a home occupation and a number of other things, but one of the others is that they're renting it through the rental registry, and we have no proposal to change that. So somebody wouldn't be allowed to double dip, in a sense, in renting out the entire residence through the rental registry and then also having an ADU. They would basically have to choose one or the other.
Thank you.
And I like your terminology, concern, better than fear. because these are concerns, not always fears on it then too, that's just semantics. But also when we redid this a year ago or so, then too, this was discussed, but we didn't want to derail the larger conversation at that point. And this is always meant to come back for the secondary conversation. So thank you, Tom, for bringing it back.
And then just the last point on this with the primary legal residence requirement. We don't have exact numbers yet from CD Long Island as they go through those 89 interest form applications, but we suspect that just as the conversations that my department's been having with the public, we suspect that a significant portion of those are going to be whittled away and deemed ineligible because of the fact that they're second homeowners. So I will provide that information when it's available, but that requirement is further limiting the +1 ADU grant program as well. So the third recommendation, somewhat common sense in terms of increasing public awareness about the process and trying to streamline it. But one of the big aspects of that is working with the building department to provide pre-approved building plans to applicants. That's a somewhat straightforward process in that we basically just, at face value, we need to come up with some plans for ADUs that the building department has looked over and that are available for potential applicants so that it saves them a little bit of time. A lot of times with applicants, they just don't know where to start in this process. So that would help them out. That helps reduce costs to them because they don't have to go as their first step and have plans for new construction drawn up. It saves them time. It saves the building department time because they don't have to, they'll be reviewing something that they've already vetted. Included in this too is updating the town website, application forms, providing public information, and also continuing with enforcing requirements and monitoring compliance. So the fourth recommendation is related to cost, which I think in many ways is the biggest impediment here, and specifically providing opportunities to reduce the overall cost to homeowners when they're applying to construct an ADU. We need to launch the town's ADU construction assistance program through the Community Housing Fund. As was mentioned a few times, there's a question about tax implications. I will say that we are having a further discussion tomorrow with them, so I think that we're going to have more information soon. And, obviously the board has to form a consensus on when to release that program, but we will have some more information on that soon. We are looking to provide an ADU construction assistance program through the town, separate than the +1 ADU grant, which still will exist in parallel. And we're looking to do that as soon as possible. Obviously continue with the +1 ADU program, which again, as I said, CD Long Island is in the process of vetting those applicants. And there may be another round of funding that's released by New York State. As a pro-housing community, we will likely be in line for getting that. We routinely check in with CD Long Island as they administer this program, and we'll find out as soon as if it's available, if there's more money available. The program seems to be successful so far. Obviously, we haven't seen an ADU built because the process just started, but with close to 90 responses, there's certainly interest. So another issue that was discussed or option that was discussed with the ADU committee was giving at least a 5-year exemption from reassessment if somebody does build an ADU. Obviously, I'm not an expert on assessment of property or how taxes are levied or anything like that, so I can't really speak to the specifics of that. But just as a general concept, that is an option that the town board, I believe, legally can provide that would give a little bit of leeway, at least in terms of the finances and someone recovering from the initial cost of constructing a unit. And then obviously, as the town does for all eligible properties, most properties, irrespective of an ADU, continue to work to provide funding available through the CPF, the Community Preservation Fund, for water quality improvements where a sanitary system is required to be upgraded. So
We have that exemption, like, because right now you can't get the grant money if you're looking to increase the number of bedrooms, but there is an exemption for if you're doing it for an ADU.
okay.
No, I'm asking you. Is there an exemption?
No. There's not a specific exemption. It still sort of falls under those guidelines of, if you are increasing development, then you become ineligible for it. There may be ways that law can be amended or clarified to allow for that. There's also ways that, whether it be the CPF or other sources of funding for sanitary upgrades, that we could incorporate those into these projects. Like, for example, I know the community development block grants. We actually received a grant a while ago, not a very large amount, but that was for sanitary upgrades. I believe that's something we can use for a few of these ADUs to help them if it's necessary. But basically, I was specific to the CPF fund, which we absolutely should look into expanding its ability to support an ADU, because I think there's a big distinction between someone who's just looking to build an ADU on their property and somebody who's looking to increase a 50-unit motel by 20 units and add a restaurant, which is really, I think, the spirit of where that prohibition came from. But we'll work on that, and we'll work within the context of existing laws to find additional funding for these things. So really the next step here, and I have a few other points to make, but would be a town board discussion right now. And then based on that discussion, we will bring the recommendations to various town staff. One of them, one group that this has to be referred to if there is going to be a code change, is the planning board. That is a mandatory requirement of the town code. From there, based on their comments, further staff review, there'll probably be further changes to the recommendations. We'll prepare draft code. We'll bring this back for a follow-up work session discussion, I'm anticipating, with the town board. After that, and if the town board has formed a consensus on specific code changes, then we'll do an environmental assessment, and a public hearing will be held, just like with any other code change. So I just wanted to very quickly say, though, there were 3 specific things that were mentioned in public comments, and just very quickly, one was there was some support expressed for a mechanism within the town code for multifamily and multiple residence development. I strongly support that and think that the town board should consider that as something that's more permitted within the town code. We do have in a limited aspects. It's permitted to build multiple residences or multifamily housing. The zoning for that permits it is very limited. There's also some other cleanup elements of the town code. I think that could be a huge part of helping the housing crisis here. So we don't have anything specific at this time, but it's something that I really encourage the town board to consider. And then along those lines, another public comment was about the number of bedrooms, and that the number of bedrooms in an ADU should be increased. Whereas I think it's worth considering, and it's a good point. Specifically, it was expressed that, you're really limiting it to single people and families can't get in there. The idea of an ADU is that it's supposed to be accessory and subordinate to a principal residence. So there's kind of a line here where you need to restrict the intensity of the use on the property, because it is supposed to be an accessory use. And then once you do get over that threshold and you're looking at something that's going to have, maybe a larger size family in it, then you really are looking at multifamily or multiple residence type housing units, which are themselves a standalone principal use. So I think that need being expressed for larger housing units that are affordable. Perhaps the ADU is not the way to do that, because this is meant to sort of be the smallest in terms of impact of the options out there. but it certainly dovetails nicely into the need for additional multiple residences and multiple family zoning.
Yes, I think also to emphasize that, Eric, when we started to review and adopt community housing legislation to the comprehensive plan, we acknowledge that there's not one size fits all solution for every affordable housing issue that we're coming across today. So I think that kind of also emphasizes the idea and the need to have many options available to the town and to folks to be able to stay and live here.
Absolutely. And then just the last point I'll make is that, so, a lot of the information that was given to you here, a lot of times we talk about hypotheticals, and really that's because sometimes you don't have information other than looking at it as a concept. But we're giving you the feedback that we've got, that we've received from the public, both my office administering the permits for ADUs and also from CD Long Island on the +1 ADU program. And really, the two main restrictive requirements are the lot size and the fact that second homeowners can't build them. And if you do the math on that, basically, right away, 60% of the lots within the town are ineligible to build an ADU because they're second homeowners. And then of the remaining 40%, the lot area requirement, 40% of that 40%, or excuse me, only 60% of that 40% have 20,000 square feet or more. So if you do that math, 60% of 40%, under these regulations, if you just picked a lot at random, a residential property in the town, 24% of them right off the bat are the only ones that are eligible to build it. So 76% of the lots are ineligible inherently because they're second homes or they're too small. So if you want, and then that is reflective of the comments that we've received. If you want to amend the code to make ADUs more accessible as an option to homeowners, and there are a lot of good reasons for that. I think right away focusing on those two requirements of the town code is the way to go. So,
thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Who wants to lead the discussion?
I gave my comments at the start. I mean, the one thing, just listening to this in the earlier conversation about seniors, it just, when I was growing up in the UK, actually, this existed, ironically, and we had an old couple who lived in an ADU in our house. And for seniors, this is an amazing thing. I mean, just the intergenerational piece of technology, having someone next door who can help you, someone who can keep an eye on you.
Yeah, the remote doesn't work.
Exactly. Nowadays it's cell phones, but then back then it was the remote. I do think that, for any seniors who have property, who, want to age in place and stay in this town, building an ADU where a younger or a couple or just another person is there to keep an eye on you is such a great thing. I grew up with it and it was a wonderful thing. So that'll be my only other point to add.
Well, I'll go next, I suppose. I'm supportive of all of the changes. I think that with the rollout of programs like this, you roll it out. I think we were a little conservative as a town because of new idea, reevaluating and realizing that there might be more opportunities that we're missing because of the restrictions we have. Just generally speaking, I think that it's been mentioned a few times here today that we need a lot of different options. It's not that ADUs are going to solve our housing problem or, apartment buildings or our home ownership program. I think we need to do all of these things. And by doing that, I think there's going to be balance throughout town where we're creating housing opportunities with an impact that's spread out and maintains our community character. So I'm supportive of all the recommendations. And I understand the concern about smaller lots and why we might be skeptical of that. But I think, restricting it to structure apartments, for example, a basement that already exists, I don't know that. I think the benefit of providing apartment opportunities in a situation like that, or ADU opportunity, outweighs the risk of overdevelopment. And I think, to Eric's point, what he's made a couple of times, the health department is going to be, a restriction there in terms of sanitary flow becomes too much.
As is the cap.
Yeah, exactly. But speaking of which, I do think that we should look at an exemption for the water quality grants for septic upgrades. If somebody is, the ADU addition prohibits them from getting that grant, I think that we should fix that. I think we want to do everything we can to encourage ADUs. And the assumption, it's not that we're looking the other way on that, it's that they're putting in a low nitrogen system to benefit the environment. And again, adding an ADU with a bedroom or two, I don't think should get in the way. Lastly, we've talked about it a number of times, but it came up here. I am still in favor, I know I'm a minority here, but I'm still in favor of proceeding with some opportunity to start funding these through town programs, even with the uncertainty of the tax situation. I understand that might not be, I'm the minority there, that might not be the right choice, but I'm very excited about pushing this program forward. And after seeing the interest through the AD the +1 program, I think that anything we can do to get a jump start would be great.
I think it's about 6 years ago that we decreased the lot size from 3/4 of an acre down to a half acre. From 1 acre to 3/4 of an acre for a detached ADU. And there were concerns that was going to be a lot of work onto the departments, or that there's such an influx of individuals that wanted to do it. Didn't happen. Then we decreased it a couple of years ago from 3/4 of an acre to a half an acre, 20,000 square feet. These are for detached. And the concerns were less that there was going to be such an increase into the school systems or onto our services. And it really didn't happen, and there wasn't an increase of a lot of applications. I think what we're seeing right now, as far as the carrot that's out there, is the funding that might be there for individuals to be able to build these through either CDLI or through the town referendum that passed as far as CHAB for funding that's going to be out there, because these are expensive and it's an expensive place to build then too. I welcome 89 applicants because through attrition on there, you're probably going to maybe see a much lower percentage of that. But even a much lower percentage of that is a much higher percentage than what we already have as far as accessory dwelling units in the town. And for each one we increase, it's an individual or a family that can potentially find their way to a foothold in East Hampton. I think that's one of my basic tenets of this. So with that being said, let me just go, if you don't mind going through it. I don't know, Ian, if we're allowed to do that through general obligation law as far as using CPF water quality funds for that. That's something that we're going to have to get an opinion on and move that ahead. Then too, I understand what you're looking at, but if there's potential other ways that can be wrapped into our grant systems on there, that's a potential thing to also look at, because that could be a substantial amount of burden as far as cost on there then too. I do agree in looking at recommendation number 1 as far as a decrease in the square footage of the property for an attached ADU, particularly if we're looking at, in the current zoning code, approximately 2,600 square feet can be built on a 10,000 square foot property right now, and that's going to be decreased. I anticipate that. Still, there's a lot of GFA in there that could be potentially used for an ADU and still be within the character of the neighborhoods, and also watching out for decreased massing. There's also things with ADUs we have to look at as far as parking spots on there, and that would go to lot coverage also then too. So there's other also factors that property owners would have to look at and appropriately design for, and they can also be, I think that can all be done even with detached ADUs at a larger square footage to work within what the character of the neighborhoods are. So that's something that I would like to continue to look at then too. And again, the last line shouldn't be alarmist as far as this many lots, because there hasn't been, there's many lots in there that haven't been pulled out of there. So it might say, yes, great, we could add these many more lots. Some other individuals might look at it, oh my God, we can add this many more lots. But the truth in the middle there is less than that, but it's still added areas of improvement that we can do to our ADU stocks. Recommendation number 2. To me, this is a little bit of a no-brainer on there. But it comes down to what you have on recommendation number 3. continue to enforce permit requirements and monitor compliance. This is what I harped on when we were going through the language for the referendum. This is what I believe your office is there to do, and we trust in your office to do this, also with code and building on there then too. As we do increase ADUs, it comes down to the permitting on there and the review of that permitting for compliance to make sure no one is going outside of that. I would like to see on an annual basis on there then too. And those are some of the ways that we can make sure that the primary legal residents use your legal team that you have to, allowed for your department to make sure that this is all set. I do know that I may be touching on a subject that's outside of this box right now, but there's some individuals that might have a primary residence that actually would be under an LLC and ownership on there. So we might want to make sure we have that ready for that type of policy or procedures to look into, to be able to lift the corporate veil to make sure that the individual that's in there right now is supposed to be there legally under what we want to do. So that's one thing also, and I know that firsthand. Let's see here. Goal 3. Public awareness. That's just fully stated. Please do it. I wouldn't even minding you put that into a budgetary, in your budget, either for 26 or 25 on there for those needs on there then too. Number 4 on there. As far as the reassessment, I'm fearful that people are nervous about getting a building permit and that would reassess their land. I would actually be favorably if we can legally do this. And again, this is just me throwing it out there to actually waive it, reassessment for something that's strictly an ADU. Now, if it ever didn't become an ADU and you kept what those and you didn't remove the ADU to back to raw space or unusable space, but you kept those improvements, then that triggers the reassessment at that point. Reassessments to some are I'm fearful of it, concerned, maybe the word on there, if I was to do that, but I don't want that to be such a concern to individuals that they would stop doing that, because long time amortization over the years of a reassessment might not be of value to put an ADU in there monetarily. So I wouldn't mind actually looking at a way, if it's legally permitted, to just waive the reassessment for an ADU. But again, if you ever stop being an ADU, that's when you would get reassessed if you didn't remove the ADU back to the raw space that it was prior. I don't know how that is. I'll bring that back to the committee. You can all look at that.
Can I play devil's advocate?
I'd love it.
So you're adding, another household, right, into the home, and you're putting additional burdens on resources, whether that's fire, PD, school, whatnot. You're getting income. I mean, I was actually quite taken aback for what you can charge in rent. It's a 2-bedroom is $3,260. I mean, I don't know if, I think it needs to be vetted. I'm not sure I'm in agreement that reassessment should be waived, because this does generate income by having an ADU in your home, and you're putting additional burdens on the community.
Sure. So I don't think you can do an ADU greater than 2 bedrooms. So it can't be 3 bedrooms. So you can only have 1 child or 2 childs of the same sex in that bedroom. I guess it's the chicken or the egg. If someone is saying I'm in conflict for even because of the long-term cost of reassessment on my property that I've had for 50 years, and I want to be reassessed, and now it's going to go upwards of 6,000 percentage more than what I'm paying in taxes, I think I'm going to walk from adding that to the stocks and the ADU. Still, that person might still have that house that be at a maximum GFA that can have actually rented out to other individuals that might have. You could put probably 5 bedrooms in a 2,600 square foot house. They can already put that burden on to the school systems and also to our infrastructure. As of right now, in a house they might have not been reassessed for 40 or 50 years on there, But now they want to actually, they might want to put it into our ADU stocks legally, that they have to be able to allow for another up and coming property or family to come and live in. So
we wouldn't have the authority to exempt school taxes, right?
I believe New York state law says that you can do a 5-year waiver on all taxes, on all reassessment taxes.
Yeah, I think I just need more information on that. I have that flagged as well.
I think the other thing I just talked about, but Kathy's point out is that one of the goals of this is that it's precisely those people who provide services to the town, your school teachers, TAs, custodians, who we can't house here to provide many of these services that we're looking to address with this. So while, yes, there may be some increased demand on town services, I also think many of these people ideally will be the service providers. So it's that fine balance.
So good points all along, and good discussion. So again, if legally, I said, so vet it out, but I don't mind exploring that a little bit more than too. So I'll ask that upon your team or the committee to look into. But overall, those are my thoughts here, and I appreciate it. And again, as always, Tom, thank you very much for moving this forward, and also thank you to the committee members that you have on your team working with it. Then too, they do provide a valuable, critical service to the town as far as advising us.
Kathy, can I just say something about the assessment? I think it's important when we talk about assessment. I'm the liaison to the assessor, so I'll ask them and the attorneys what we're legally able to do. But I do think it's important that it wouldn't be a property-wide reassessment anyway. You'd be assessed on just the addition of the ADU, or if there were unapproved other structures, those would get assessed at that time, but they're not. In any case, no one's going to come in and do a sweep of your house and reassess it. So I think that the risk here is minimal, and that any assessment that happens would only be for that new structure.
Right.
And I'll get information about what we're legally able to do. So if there's a will on the board to waive it for 5 years, I'll confirm whether that's possible.
Yeah, and also on
the change of structure. Sorry, Kate, not the new. You said new structure. This would be just a change within the structure.
Well, it depends. ADUs can be separate or not.
Recommendation was for attached and detached, right?
Right.
I just mean that in terms, because I've had this question a couple of times myself. People are fearful or worried about doing an ADU and what that means for assessment. And I spoke to the assessors about it, and very specifically, you would be assessed only on that structure, whether it's, however it is, if it's detached in the house, but they're not going to come and look at your whole property unless you have a bunch of other unimproved structures that need a CO, then, but it's not a property-wide reassessment regardless.
And the new livable space that would need to be assessed for ADUs is limited in size as well, compared to what's built out there for profit. So, we're looking at 300 to maximum 1,200 square foot. So I think that's a limitation as well. You can't add a 2,000 square foot addition to your house for an ADU. And again, we're seeing much higher numbers. And that's one of the reasons why we need to do this. David, are you finished?
Yeah, I am. Thank you for the discussion. I guess, to me, I'm looking forward to the date when this becomes a good problem. Where it becomes too much for your department. That's a good problem for the town to have, because we're solving something then too. So, yes, I am finished. Thank you very much.
So I appreciate everybody's comments. The only one I would add is on the recommendation for a kind of a pre-planned plan for the building department.
Mm-hmm.
That would be tough for me, except for in the basement or a detached ADU. But as far as manipulating upstairs area, a basement's one thing. You have this much is going to be storage, and this is what you can do in the allotted space. Here's a 300, 400. We'd have to have multiple plans, and also for the detached, I think it gets a little dicey when it's an interior space above ground. But I am thankful to the committee and Tom for leading this. Eric, I think this is, again, as we see real estate prices ever on the rise in this town, we need to, and we're bound to by the comprehensive plan, and again, tired of hearing me say that, I'm sure. But in the community housing fund, we're bound to equalize, to make a more level playing field for the folks in this town that do provide the services, that can no longer afford to live here generationally and can no longer afford to age in place. So we've already identified a crisis before, and when we started this work, that the affordable housing in this town is at the lack of it is at a crisis level. We know we're losing our community, and so I think these recommendations are really reflective of the need. And generally, I support them. I just also have the same couple of legal questions that we would need to follow up on. It would be great to have, I don't want to be onerous, but when you say that the lots right now that are, because they're substandard 2B, can't fit an ADU or are out of the scope, it would be great to know those 16, or I think it was, in the B zone, what size lots those are, because I think I've just found that people really see it as, they forget that there's a big range between 20,000 and 10,000. They think it just jumps from 20 and now you're going down to 10 and oh my gosh, but there's actually quite a huge range in substandard lot sizes in our town, and I think it's appropriate to look at those eligibilities.
Yeah, so hopefully you can share that data that was pulled for the zoning code amendment work group with Eric and Tom.
I have the data.
So I'm supportive of, recommendation 1 and 2, although David brings up a good point with the recommendation 1, we got to look at parking, because that can have an impact on a 10,000 square foot lot. And I also, David, liked your point on recommendation 2, like some of these homes are, LLCs. And then I think if you're going to be taking funding from the town or whatnot, we need to lift the corporate veil. On recommendation 3, obviously update the town website, continue to enforce permit requirements. For me, those are no-brainers. But I read the first bullet, working with the housing and building departments to provide pre-approved building plans. To me, that was only for detached. I didn't assume it was for attached. And right now, it's a very small sample size, but only 20% are detached. I think that's a longer-term project and, lower on the priority list, quite frankly. Although it did come up in Choff many years ago when Sylvia was the liaison. I think it was Scott Bluedorn that brought it up, because in out near LA, they do have like 3 plans, or what, A, B, and C. So, and then just as far as recommendation 4, the 2 notes that I've got is, the reassessment piece and the upgrading of sanitary systems and how that works, interacts with CPF law, all that needs to get vetted.
But just quickly speaking to the pre-plans thing, it is something we discussed as a committee. One of the committee members is a builder, and he said, "Oh, I'll do the plans." I'm like, no, anything like that would have to go out to RFP, obviously. But how, referring back to slide number 6 here, when you kind of look at the different types of attached ADUs, there are some that could benefit from pre-plan. So that kind of the second image on the top row, where you have the building directly attached to another structure. It's kind of like a detached structure, but it's attached. In that case, maybe a pre-plan does work, but I agree with you. I think that's something that's further out for this process, but worth exploring in the future.
I think when I brought it maybe to Eric last year sometime, certain individuals are good at designing an outside landscape. Certain individuals are good at being doctors. Those individuals that might be very smart at being a doctor or something else are just not very good at building elements in space. So it's just one of those ways they get over what a hurdle for someone might be to move forward on this potentially. But I think that's what it is for me.
Great.
Yeah, we could start with the detached and, phase in others.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Eric. Really good job. Thank you. And Andrew, thank you very much, one of our committee members. So. And Brian, if you're still on the phone, thank you very much for all your help too.
Okay, so now we're up to liaison reports. Tom, you want to start us off, please?
I'm sorry. Against Citizens Advisory Committee will be meeting on November 18th, 6:30 p.m. at the school library. Tina Legaren will be our guest speaker at that meeting. Additionally, I forwarded to my colleagues the LKMA proposal for the Main Street lighting project. If we can move that forward, it would be great. I would love to bring that to a work session at some point before the end of the year, if possible. The other piece that committee members and others have been reaching out to me is I call it fly tipping, but just the disposal of large items of garbage on the side of the road.
Yes.
It's disgusting. Please know that if you are caught doing that, we will pursue you for the full extent of the law. But if you value this community, it's not something you should be doing.
Right. I think what folks sometimes do is they'll put it out there and they'll put free on it because they don't want to pay the surcharge to take it or they don't have the means to get it to the recycling center.
Yes. Human Services, if we could just pull up the images, the first one of the existing senior center. I just wanted to thank the buildings department for the repairs that have gone on there. We've repaired the back of the building. The side is currently coming up. I don't know if those images came through, but it's looking fantastic. Also this week, Diane, Liliana, and myself met with a volunteer group from Montauk regarding the Montauk seniors and the provision of services. The particular discussion was around the temporary closure of the Montauk pharmacy as it relocates and how we can ensure that seniors have access to pharmacy supplies during this time. Liliana has put together a great list of what the available services are, particularly relating to transportation and other things. These will be available from the Little Flower Volunteer Community Group. We're going to have them placed in doctor's offices, PT offices, in the library. I have some copies here now, which I'll leave behind. But for any more information you may require on this, please reach out to Liliana Rodriguez in the Human Services Department. Her number is 631-329-6939. Locally, Megan Walsh and Tricia Wood are also points of contact for anyone in need of assistance. Fire Marshal, myself and one of the fire marshals attended a talk this weekend by Richard Burt, who is a former captain of the Las Vegas Fire Department. This was with the East End Chiefs and Fire Commissioners as well. And it was discussion around solar panels, particularly, and latterly around EVs. Based on what was shown there, I do think there is need for us to revisit our code on solar panels in terms of mitigating fire safety risks, and particularly risk to firefighters and homeowners. Things around micro-inverter requirements, shutdown signage, battery locations, exterior rapid shutdown. What are the best practices we can implement here to mitigate risk and off-gassing from potential batteries associated with solar panels? Also, we currently don't really have a differentiation in the code for residential and commercial solar farms. That is something that's a recommendation that came out of that meeting. Additionally, and I will be working on this with the fire marshal, is lithium batteries as a whole and their disposal and the fire risk that's associated with those. Fires associated with lithium batteries are exceptionally hard to manage. And this is one of the pieces the talk went over as to what are firefighters' best methods for managing said fires. There are challenges that, use of excessive water and drainage of the battery have the possibility of leaching heavy metals, which is a major concern. The scope that we're going to look for the fire departments and ourselves to potentially reach out to FRES to see what other resources are out there in order to mitigate that risk. There is something out there called a fire safety containing unit. The goal around that is that it's a container that recycles the water. So the vehicle or a scooter or whatever it is that's on fire is dragged into that container, and then a recycled cold steam is used to mitigate the flames and manage that to avoid any kind of leaching concerns. But it's something that, one of the things that came out of this talk is that EVs, solar panels are coming. They're not stopping. They're here. We need to understand the risks associated with them and invest in infrastructure to manage said risk. So that's something the fire marshal and I will be looking to do a work session on in the near future. Sanitation. Gloria Frazee, who called in earlier, and Craig Fick have asked to do a work session on December 3rd regarding composting. Craig, as we know, recently went to a seminar on the composting process up in Saratoga, and Gloria wants to give a review of how the composting volunteer program worked out over the summer. Just additionally, for all our Montauk residents, we are looking for any volunteers who may be interested in transporting the existing compost to the sanitation center on Mondays. I'm happy to continue doing as needed, but more volunteers would be welcomed. ADU committee will be meeting on the 14th, 11:30 a.m. via Zoom. Montauk wastewater, we have a meeting on the 18th at 6 p.m. with residents of Camp Hero to review the history and discuss their wastewater management plans for the future. East End Fire Commissioners, I hope all the public are aware, but we do have a current red flag warning out at the moment for the fire risk. Additionally, there is a gale warning in effect as of today from 1 p.m. to 1 a.m. on Wednesday. We're expecting northwest winds of around 30 knots with gusts at 35 knots and sea waves of 5 to 7 feet. The current high fire risk we have out there is major concerns. I hope and I think you're all aware, but please be exceptionally cautious with disposal of materials and the risk that proposes to firefighters. Disability Advisory Board will be meeting on the 15th at 1:30 p.m. The Anti-Bias Task Force will be meeting on the 13th at 4 p.m. and they are also looking to do a work session regarding town communications. Arts Council Committee will be meeting on the 18th at 4:30 p.m. The Business Committee will be meeting on the 20th at 2 p.m. Emergency preparedness, our last meeting, we had the committee members do a review of what they saw with the hurricanes recently hitting in the southeast and the challenges faced and what lessons could potentially be learned for the town of East Hampton. Some of the key feedback we got that we're going to look to address is, the challenge of evacuation orders, how they're not adhered to often, how to start that process early, the importance of communication strategy, and how to effectively communicate with transient populations, especially in a town like ours. The establishment potentially of evacuation zones, all that does have complications. The nature of these storms is entirely unpredictable. I think, as we all recall, we saw with Tampa at one point, it was looking incredibly concerning as to what would happen, and in the end was not as bad. And this unpredictability has its challenges because we may issue orders for evacuation or movement of people, and then something doesn't happen as we expected, and the implications that has on businesses. So having businesses understand that, I think, is key because we do in those situations have to ensure that the public adhere to instructions given by the town. The other pieces that came out with regards to this are ensuring we have early partnership with other government agencies. Obviously for us, the shelter in place and resiliency education and preparedness are key. One thing that's kind of relatively unconsidered that we're going to do a better job on our town website of doing is the challenge of communication post the event. We saw in many of the regions the loss of cellular networks. So how do we effectively communicate with the public in those situations, and what can we do? Some committee members also asked if we could potentially do a tabletop exercise. There's been one done in the past. I think the last one was done in 2007. So looking potentially do another one in the near future. Another smart recommendation that was made from that was having the town website have an emergency mode in those situations. There's a huge amount of information we have on our website, but in those kind of situations, having a more simplified town website with the critical information on there was a recommendation that was made. We are looking to do Red Cross shelter training. Related to that, we're looking to add with town approval, town board approval, a volunteer sign up on the town emergency preparedness webpage for anyone interested in doing that. A last piece that kind of came out of that meeting was the challenge of managing volunteer resources, both in terms of volunteers themselves, but also in terms of donations coming in, etc. I've talked to the Human Services Department about this a little bit, and we're trying to coordinate with different volunteer organizations within the town that if we do have an emergency event in our town, or if there's an emergency event elsewhere in the country and people do look to donate resources or money, how to centralize that in some way and provide a database of organizations that are accepting donations to help the public here support elsewhere. Lastly, I think one of the key kind of findings is, we see it elsewhere, but the challenge of misinformation. So that goes back to that key communication strategy. But it was a very effective and interesting meeting with something that was very real in the recent future. And that is my update.
Thank you, Tom. David?
Ian Calder Piedmont has signed up for the annual turkey trot already.
Twice.
Twice. I know everyone else is doing it. The signups are online for the annual turkey trot happening here in Montauk. Please go to Elite Feats for that then too. Scout season in town waters and trustee waters have opened this past weekend. I have not heard of too much on the street, but overall, we wouldn't have anything or as nearly as good as any type of particular season we're having this year in the years past without John Barley Dunn, our head of aquaculture and aquaculture department and their staff. So I want to salute them and potentially get them here for end of season, maybe discussion in the next couple of months then too. So I want to thank them and for all their efforts then too. Out here in Montauk, we might be aware, the board is aware that we upgraded our 2 septic systems at our Gin Beach Comfort Station. That has been almost complete. Some paving up there in South Edison has been complete, and they need to be done with some paving there also. Again, this just shows the town's priority and initiatives to continue to upgrade our IA systems. And we have a resolution on, I believe it's for next week, to accept installation for the new IA system at the Springs Library, upcoming then too. The Stephen Hans Path multi-use field the design is moving ahead pretty simplistically and then too, and we'll be looking to get that out to bid potentially by next week also then too for construction this winter time. Montauk CAC met last week, yes. The speeding discussion and the criteria was discussed, as I mentioned there. There was the one location that was requested. Also, we spent a good amount of time of discussion on the potential intersection, the redesigns of the intersection of Industrial Road and Second House Road, going to raising the road and going to more of a stop sign intersection instead of the roundabout that was been tabled. I'll send around to the town board the schematics of that and then just some draft engineering for your discussion. Maybe we can discuss that at an upcoming meeting also then too, because again, this is a collaboration with PSE&G, and PSE&G would like to try to move forward with this. And as far as the timing, can we get this done before next summer, or is it a post-summer project also then too? The town's beach advisory group did meet the week before last, and as exited the calendar year 2024 summer season, met with Sergeant Aversa talking about some of our LPRs and our parking also. I'd like to put that on for a town board discussion in the next couple of weeks before the year's end, just to let everyone know how the summer 2024 went and how we can prepare ourselves better for 2025. Army Corps of Engineers, we had a meeting with Army Corps of Engineers and the DEC to discuss the Montauk beach crossovers. They're planning to have them, the ones that are terminally damaged, to be removed and just to go at grade sand crossovers. Once again, we will await final word from our local partner, the DEC, on that, and then timing for their removal. And I'll let the board know.
That's a big win.
Yeah. Didn't come so easily, but yes, it's good to move that ahead. Stephen Hans Path and Long Lane, the roundabout that's going to be installed there. We had an on-site meeting there last week. You're going to start seeing action there as far as tree clearing and topping there from the utilities and utility movements there. Probably in the next couple of weeks, work is imminent there. Rosemar is the contractor there. We'll be moving right in behind there as far as drainage and to reformulate that intersection in advance of the summer season for next year, 2025, as part of the town's and public safety initiative and traffic calming in that location then too.
So if you could keep Patrick in the loop on that so that we can post, so if roads get closed or there's a lot of action and activity over there.
Sure.
So that we could get ahead of it, because I think there'll be, our phones will be ringing off the hook when the work starts. So it'd be good to have that.
No problem. So there's 2 projects over there. One is the state project on 114. We don't have as much control over that. And then the town project, talking with Rosemar, they're not expecting to have any roads closed, but to have travel lanes closed with flaggers, if you want to say down there.
That's great, because the state has closed
So
the roads over the, the season?
Yeah, so the state closed the roads over there most recently because they found some wiring in there that they weren't anticipated. So that's what came out of one of those meetings. But that's not a problem at all. And Patrick, I'll continue to keep you on speed dial for me also. Also, as far as the state parks put out a press release also talking about getting ready to begin the removal insect damaged trees on Nepean State Park. Again, this came from the state parks, New York State Parks Park Office. Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historical Preservation will continue work this winter to address the substantial impacts from the recent outbreaks of the invasive southern pine beetles in the Nepean State Park. The Nepean is home to critically imperiled maritime pitch pine dune woodland natural community in the state and federally endangered northern long-eared bat, which we heard about earlier. Most recent outbreak of the SPB has caused mass decline in the death of tens of thousands of bitch pines trees across Nepean and Long Island. The increased dead trees has resulted in more fuel in the event of a wildfire and potentially decreased access for responders. Pitch pine systems are fire dependent, and sometimes wildfires naturally occur. But in the continued effort to increase access to emergency responders in the case of a wildfire, enhance safety along trails, and prepare for anticipated future actions to reduce fuel loads, the following work is scheduled to begin December 2024, and it's being led by the state parks and state DEC in collaboration. Dead trees will be removed primarily along the heavily used Palm Path and Promised Land Trail with the goal of increasing emergency responder access to the park interior and decreasing potentially hazards to hikers. Work crews will mostly be on foot using chainsaws to help protect sensitive habitats. All shrubbery vegetation within approximately 250 feet of the southern side of the fuel break of near Bayview will be cut to the ground. This is called ladder fuel. This will greatly increase visibility and access for emergency responders and decrease the intensity of potential fires, and will also benefit the overall health of the habitat. Work crews will primarily be using forestry mulchers in these locations for this then too. State Parks has been working closely with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation to limit the impacts on federally endangered northern long-eared bat and stay in the compliance of the Endangered Species Act and the tree cutting. And this will start on December 1st and go through February 28th on there then too. For more information, please contact the New York State Office of Parks and Recreation and Historical Preservation. I do know that they are collaboratively working with the fire departments in the town on this project, but be led by them. So if you hear heavy machinery in those areas, it is another phase of the removal of these trees for public safety and for fire prevention.
Great, thank you.
That's all I have.
Thank you, David. Thanks, David. That keeps me up at night. So thank you. Less time up at night. Well, my liaison report is safely on my desk. And I am here. So I'm just going to ask for a little patience as I go through my notes. Sorry, folks. The Litter Action Committee met. They had a really well turned out cleanup this past Saturday along Springs Fireplace Road. I believe there's some social media posts going on about that. And again, I want to thank Mickey's Karting, who always supports our cleanups, provides trucks and cleanup material during these cleanups. It's a great example of how we can come together to solve problems. I want to remind folks that the code change to cover and secure the loads in the back of your trucks, your open pickup trucks, has passed, and code enforcement is out right now issuing warnings to update people on that. We have a lot of litter and some dangerous situations where we've seen some tires fly off the back of, we had some photographs of tires flying out of a pickup truck, the back of a pickup truck onto the roadway. So please comply and do your part to cover and secure any of the loads that are in the back of your trucks or on the top of your cars. At the last Litter Action Committee meeting, Bill O'Leary from the East Hampton Sportsman Alliance joined us. They are also interested as users of our outdoor spaces, trails, recreation areas, concerned about the amount of litter, and we're going to do some collaboration with that group as well. And again, the Litter Action Committee is seeking any collaboration public-private business to meet with us and come up with collaborative solutions on litter. The committee is now working with Patrick to, one of their recommendations to us is adopting and developing a town-wide formal anti-litter campaign, and they've set up some meetings with Patrick to do some drafts on that. The committee had some ideas on they would like to bring to the town board on trash can placement in some areas.
I met with them.
You met with them on that. Okay, so they were looking to talk about some pilot program on some additional trash cans, say along the new walking, or not so new anymore, sidewalk on Springs Fireplace Road.
There was two locations I think we were looking at. One of them would be by the senior center, and the other one might be by the bus shade area on Acabonic over by Whalebone on Benton.
Yeah,
Not
so
Whalebone.
that's great news.
Windmill.
Yeah, to see that moving forward. They always have questions about placement of cans. Also, the one of the heaviest areas that they see is where folks can get sandwiches or any type of food. There's outdoor dining set up, and these areas tend to be very heavy in litter. And again, when it's windy, this blows all over the place, and they do a lot of cleanup in these areas. So we wanted to look at the current code requirements for where a trash can needs to be placed, and also have them emptied so they don't become overflowing. They're now also going to reach out, do their business in the off season to their business outreach to see how they can collaborate on these efforts, and also come up with a contractor handout for construction debris that also we're finding all over the place, especially in this type of windy season. So again, they're busy litter action committee. The Wayne-Scott CAC met. There were robust discussion again on the gun club, and I think they've made their views known in public to the town board. They also had another discussion on their concern about traffic, and are very supportive of seeing the procedure for determining lower speed limits move forward. That they're looking at that greatest anticipation. There was a discussion on Main Street, the new purchase by the town board, and setting up historical and licensing agreements, et cetera, on that, just keeping that process moving forward. They also talked about, they heard an additional housing proposal by a guest speaker, and they are looking forward to 2025 with a change in leadership and some members, long-term members who have spent hours and hours in service to the community retiring, and new members coming on board. Next, I have the Energy and Sustainability Committee. I'm sorry, one more thing on the Wayne-Scott CAC. They've invited Steve Lynch to come and meet with them, either at the CAC, which would probably be the best choice, so that, because a lot of community members attend that CAC, it's well attended by other Wayne-Scott residents besides the actual committee. They would like to meet with Steve Lynch. They are hearing wonderful things about speed bumps from their neighbors in Sagaponack, and they would like to bring that discussion back to Steve Lynch. They've invited him to attend one of the upcoming meetings of the CAC. The Litter Action Committee has asked that we schedule the second public hearing for the roadmap. Rob, if that resolution could be prepared. Yes. Rob is behind. That's why we're all going like this when we try to see Rob. They are having another group of concerned citizens come in to talk about revising some of the leaf blower codes that we have adopted. For example, they spoke about the fact that in September there's no leaves coming down, but the ban ends in middle September. So ways to tweak that after having a couple of years of it under our belt. Next, the all-important ditch plains dune project plan group met with our coastal engineers and town staff, and we had a very productive meeting with the DEC on submittal of plans. We are going to be a permit application, submitting a set of plans. They gave us some tweaks to the plan that they had liked to see, and the coastal engineering firm came up with a new set of plans delivered it Friday. So we'll be sending that out to the DEC for comments. In order to streamline the process, the DEC likes to have these pre-permit application meetings. So we're facilitating that. And
Can you also route that to all board members?
Sure. And we're we're looking forward to working collaboratively with them. It's been quite a collaborative effort to date. Also, we've had outreach to both of the private property owners at Ditch and are continuing talking to them about permission to put the dune on their property. The tweaks that the DEC talked about is on town property, pushing the dune further back out of the intertidal zone, so it would be basically not having contact with the tide, and also keeping the space for the recreational beach available as much as possible. And they've also had conversation with FEMA representatives, and it looks like we can look at a 16-foot to 20-foot high dune to be FEMA compliant. So we'll, as soon as if we hear any more tweaks from the DEC after we present the pre-application plans, will be coming out, looking to come back to the town board for a work session and reaching out to the community. The New York State grant for coastal resiliency for the study area in Montauk, we've been meeting, the steering committee for that ad hocly have been meeting, and that includes our private partners that are named in the grant, which is the Montauk Chamber of Commerce and also the Nature Conservancy. We have sent back the revised contract to the state and are looking forward to finalization of the contract. Again, after that happens, we'll be coming back to the town board for a work session on that project. The amendment, we had a public hearing last Thursday on the proposed amendments by the zoning code working group. That record is still open. If anyone would like to submit comments to cbrennan@ehamptonny.gov. That record will close, and these comments must be submitted before 4 p.m. on Friday the 15th. Also, are you going to talk about Prop 3? You go ahead. Okay. So I just want to let folks know that Proposition 3 had to do with the alienation of parkland for a traffic improvement process, which was decided by the voters, sent to the voters. It was a proposition on the ballot on the November election that was approved. And I also note that, and we talked about misinformation before, I also note that on every single headline, no matter how many times we've corrected this, and even though the ballot language did not include this, it is not specifically for a roundabout at Springs Fireplace Road. It is for a traffic improvement plan that will be decided by the county, who has the authority. It's their road. And this whole process came out of a public meeting that was really well attended by the community and the Suffolk County DOT and their planners for the 3 Mile Harbor Road improvement project, and at which time the community implored the county to do something about that dangerous intersection. So I just wanted to update folks on that as well. And
So can I just piggyback on that? So obviously the unofficial results is that proposition passed with 57% of the vote. We're waiting now on the final election results. And once we receive those, I'll be sending a letter to Suffolk County Legislator Ann Welker so she can inform Suffolk County DPW, because they are currently working on the engineering plans, to give them a heads up that the property was, we went through the parkland alienation, we took it out of nature preserve status, and the community supported that action.
And that's all I have.
Okay, there's a Springs Park meeting on November 18th at 4:30 at Town Hall. Anybody interested in and concerned about Springs Park? This is a public meeting open to anybody who wants to attend. That committee has made a real priority of making sure our meetings are open to the public. So again, please spread the word. I hope that after this committee meeting, we are able to have a work session at the town board level to act on recommendations or not, but have sort of a wrap-up conversation to see how we want to proceed on some of the things that we've discussed in the management plan. The Old Stone Highway Culvert project started and very quickly made an impactful difference. That project has evolved a little bit into two phases. So anybody who's driven down Old Stone will notice that the Phragmite has been removed and really opened up that view shed. They are securing the shoreline there, and then there's a part of the project that's going to spread into the spring based on weather conditions, so that the plantings will be finished up in the springtime, that the shoreline will be secured, but because of cold temperatures and the risk of plantings not taking, we're going to wait to finish some of those plantings in the spring. Also in the springtime, based on the availability of the pipe to be replaced as the culvert, that's going to happen in the springtime. We're trying to coordinate that with the schools so that we can minimize disruption towards traffic patterns. The last part that's going to take place in the springtime is the bridge being painted and sandblasted based on the temperature needed for various epoxies and paints. Again, the calendar is pushed back a little bit, but I hope that people who have driven by are pleased with that project. I know that I am. And again, by the springtime, it should be wrapped up entirely. The CHAB committee has been working hard about making recommendations to the town board for the RFA that we put out for CHF funds. There were several people who applied for various types of projects. The CHAB committee is currently evaluating them and will present to this board in a meeting in the next few weeks, November or December. Looking forward to that because as the housing liaison, as we mentioned today with ADUs, I'm very excited about having this funding for housing, which is such a big issue in our town. And I can't thank the CHAB committee enough for the diligent work they're doing on vetting those, and I look forward to the recommendations. There's a property management committee meeting on November 13th, tomorrow at 4:30 at Town Hall. Our focus in recent meetings has been the Dodge property. The Dodge property in Springs is a historic house, barn, and shed. The property management committee is largely tasked with dealing with structures on CPF land, not municipal buildings, but often historic structures, like in the case of the Dodge property where the town purchases a property and there's a building that needs to be cared for. Similarly, at 66 Main Street in Waynescott, there are two structures there that this committee will eventually get into. And again, I want to thank that committee for their hard work. And really all committees in the town. I think that we are better as a town when we have involvement from different people throughout the community. And with that in mind, I just request that anybody who's interested in any aspect of the town government or things going on, reach out to us. We really want to hear your voice and include people. And again, for those who are already serving on a volunteer basis, incredibly grateful for that. And again, the town is better off for all of you. Couple of other things I wanted to bring up. Eric mentioned multiple residents, and so did a caller today. Again, as the liaison to Housing Department, this is something that Eric and I have been discussing, as well as with planning. So I hope in the near future to bring that issue to the town board about how we might look at multiple residence zoning or use and what role that might play in affordable housing options. I think like all, new ideas or changes like that, it'll be complicated, but I think the sooner we get talking about it and the more input we get from the public, the better. So to the caller and anybody else who has thoughts about that, please reach out because it's something that we're in the early phases of starting to get in discussion. I also want to talk about the right-of-way, which came up a little bit with road safety today. I would like to continue to move forward to see what we can do about right-of-way encroachments. I think it's a complicated issue. not one that we're going to solve overnight, but I think that there are problems throughout town with people encroaching in the right of way causing safety issues. And I would like to come up with a fair plan with input from Highway Department and code enforcement and of course other town board members about how we might, start to improve that situation to improve safety. Lastly, just to piggyback on something that Tom said, lithium batteries. We're encouraging so much of, electric usage, and I'm wholly in favor of that. But I did encounter a situation this summer where somebody was asking me where to return a swollen lithium battery that was compromised. And I have to be honest, I didn't have any answers. I Googled it, Staples and other places will take them, but not if they're damaged. And so in this case, it was just a cell phone pack or something like that. But we want to encourage this, but I think we have to make sure that there's a safe way to dispose of them. And there's some work to do there. So I appreciate Tom bringing that up. And that's all I have.
Great. Thank you, Ian. I'm going to keep my report brief. The East Hampton Town Police Department conducted a tobacco and cannabis enforcement detail late last month that included a compliance check on 3 establishments conducted with an underage agent and a plainclothes officer. 1 establishment requested the ID and was in compliance. 2 other shops sold tobacco vape to an underage agent. Both defendants were charged. Upon inspection, all products sold at the 3 retail establishments appeared to be in compliance with New York State cannabis laws, and this is going to be an effort that town police will be working on. The annual Drug Take-Back Day on Saturday, October 26th, was a huge success. Community members disposed of 75 pounds of unused medication. That's considerably up from last year, where 50 pounds of unused medications were dropped off. Just want to remind folks that, if you missed Drug Take-Back Day, there are other locations in town where unused drugs can be dropped off at the Town Police Headquarters in Wainscott, as well as the Montauk Precinct out here, East Hampton Village Police Headquarters, the East Hampton Senior Center during business hours, and White's Apothecary of East Hampton. We also, at the same day we did Drug Take Back, we also had our first annual free community paper shredding event, and that was a tremendous success as well, and we look forward to making this an annual event. And I know it's late in the meeting, but I'm going to play a little guessing game. Does anybody want to guess how many pounds of paper got shredded that Saturday?
676.
Ooh, so specific. 500, I'll go on.
I'm going 631 for our area code.
Nice.
620.
What?
$1.
4,000.
Whoa.
I just cursed.
Beep. We shredded 2 tons of paper.
Wow.
I stopped by there a couple of times, and folks were so grateful for the service. We're reducing the amount of waste in our landfill and eliminating the risk of, folks obtaining your personal information, and that just reduces clutter in your home. So that was a tremendous success. And then I'll just finish on, a couple of us brought up the 66 Wainscott Main Street purchase. We did take a vote to acquire it. It was Thursday night after a long meeting, so I don't know if folks listened to the end, and I got an update. We're looking to close on that property in mid-December, which is great news.
Great.
So this may be coming to you, Ian, to your property management committee sooner than later.
Great. We look
So
forward to it.
that's what I have from my liaison report. We're going to move on to resolutions.
I would like,
David, I guess you go first.
yes, I'd like a motion to withdraw Resolution 2024-1399.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Again, that was to withdraw. Carol, I just want to make sure. Thank you. Okay, I'm happy to offer Resolution 2024-1400. This is authorized a CPF Water Quality Award for Round 2 for 2024 to the Longhouse Reserve. Again, this is for IA sanitary system improvements. And the award funding award is $151,240.
Second. All in favor?
Aye. 1401. That's my parents' home phone number. Anyway, Authorize CPF Water Quality Award for round 2 2024 to the Driftwood Apartment Corporation. And this is again for our wastewater treatment improvement for the funding award of amount of $200,000.
Second. All in favor?
Aye. 1402 is authorize CPF Water Quality Award for round 2 2024 to Beconic Land Trust. This is for a project type which is a non-point source pollution abatement. Funding award is $521,235.
Second. All in favor?
Aye. 1403, don't gag on this number here, but it was just stated by the Madam Supervisor. This is for a CPF budget modification for land acquisition. This is changing for revenue, increasing the revenue line for unappropriated reserve surplus in the amount of $56 million and increasing the budget line for land acquisition in the amount of $56 million.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
I have Resolution 1404, and this is to accept security and undertaking. This is where urban renewal plans govern the development of all 5 map areas, and a predetermined amount of road work at the time of a building permit is sought for the lot. Resolved that the undertaking, together with the following security, are hereby accepted by the town. Applicant is JCH1 LLC, care of Yusef Mina. The parcel is at tax map number 365, block 14, lots 19 through 26. Urban renewal parcel 85 and SP-2-2, tax map number 300-76-3-26.1, and it's for in the amount of $24,000.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Resolution 1405 is to release security in urban renewal parcel 60A in MN-4, and this is resolved that the following security held by the town board for the urban roadwork and urban renewal areas is hereby released. The applicant is Molly Nolan and Drew Foglia, and the urban renewal parcel is UR parcel 60A in MN-4, map 1016, block 91, lot 15, tax map number 300-28-3-13, and it's to release the amount of $9,600.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Resolution 1406 is the approval of a special event at the Art Center at Duck Creek, November 2024, and this actually runs through the winter. This is the Art Center at Ducks Creek, the Ian Swardley Outdoor Sculpture Exhibit, and this will take place Friday. This installation is from Friday, 11/15/2024 through Tuesday, April 15, 2025, 7 a.m. to 5 p.m., open to the public.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Resolution 2024-1407 is a budget modification for the town attorney's office. We're increasing the revenue budget line safety inspection fees in the amount of $60,000 and increasing the expenditure budget line of outside professional in the same amount.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
1408 is a budget modification for the finance department, and this is moving $4,000 from part-time salaries to insurance.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so I know we have
You have one more?
no,
Oh,
that's all I-
David. Additional resolutions, 1409?
I'm so sorry. I brought this one from home, so.
Yeah, I don't have that yet either.
Is that on the agenda for today? I have an additional resolutions after deadline.
What time you printed it out?
Or, I don't know,
Hand it to David.
Yeah, I'll take it. 9 a.m.
9 a.m.
Yes, okay, so this is Resolution 2024-1409. This is authorized access and temporary use for a water quality improvement project plan to Cornell Cooperative Extension for the installation of a permeable reactive barrier into Hog Creek. The location would be 2 CPF properties at tax map 300-39-1, 13.001. And 300-39-1-14, utilizing non-invasive techniques. And this will be at 3 Hall Creek Road and 6 Kings Point Road for up to 6 months.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so do I have a resolution to go into exec session?
Yes, I'd like to make a resolution to go into executive session for personnel, advice of counsel, contracts, and CPF.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today, and
You have
thank
to
you.
stay.
Thank you, Jason.
I just lost everything I typed today. Let's start all over.
You're kidding us, aren't you?